Well, hello everybody. We'll be starting here shortly, going live at 7:30. Just started the live stream a few minutes early to get that link out there. So please share, like, subscribe. We got an action-packed evening tonight. You would not believe, you will not be happy with some of the bills we got going through the state legislature this week. Some really rough stuff and some updates on some really interesting bills. We got a lot of more committee hearing dates to talk about. We're going to give you updates on some of the most important bills going through our state legislature this year, as well as have a great guest, Representative Jarvis Caldwell, to fill us in on what's going on down at the state capitol. So we're going live here at about 7:30. Just started the stream a few minutes early. So hopefully you can join us. Stay tuned. We'll be rocking and rolling here in just a minute. Thank you. I see some people joining us on the live stream there on YouTube. Be getting started here shortly. You got about 5 minutes to go, so please stay tuned. Really important update on what's happening at the state capitol this week. We're going to have a state representative join us about 8 o'clock. So you do not want to miss this. If you want to be informed about Colorado politics, this is definitely the place to be. We'll be getting started here in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Just a couple minutes to go before we get started. So please share, like, subscribe. Let's get as many people on this live stream as we can. We will be interacting with the chat here on YouTube. So we are very interactive and we'll take questions for our special guest, Representative Jarvis Caldwell, who will be joining us here a little bit later in the program. So we'll talk to you here shortly. Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from Free State, Colorado, here with our weekly legislative live stream. We also have Michael Vance, the legislative director for the Libertarian Party of Colorado. Michael, how are you this week?
I'm doing well, Brandon. How about yourself?
Hey, pretty good, pretty good. It has been a beautiful day, beautiful weekend. We are so lucky to live here in Colorado. An amazing sun, amazing temperature, absolutely wonderful way to start the week here. And couldn't resist creating the slideshow around kind of a spring theme because it definitely feels like spring out there.
Absolutely. And I mean, days like today are a perfect reason for us to keep on fighting for our state. I mean, we're so lucky to live where we do. I mean, you're so right about that, Brandon. So, let's get into it.
Definitely, yeah. We're not going to let the commies chase us out of Colorado for sure. We are here to fight. We're here. So, yeah, let's jump in. We got an action-packed evening tonight, folks. Really glad you're joining us here. We got a great chat going. Please let us know any questions you have, any comments. We are definitely very interactive. So, this is week 8 of the legislative session here, our eighth live stream doing this. So, here we go. We're going to get started. 497 bills have introduced, if you're keeping track at home. 497 bills, an unbelievable amount of legislation. Hard to believe that these legislators can keep it all straight, that they can really cause so much damage in such a short time here in Colorado,
It,
but I guess that's the way it goes.
No, I completely agree. It's absolutely wild to me that they can introduce so many bills and so many of them. I mean, we see a few of them here and there that are liberty minded, and I really appreciate those bills. But so many of these bills are so disgusting in terms of what they want to do to our human liberty as Coloradans.
100%. They are turning us into second class citizens just because we live here in Colorado. And that is why we fight, folks. One of the many reasons. So we have an action-packed evening for everybody at home. At 7:30 here, we're getting started. We're going to start talking about some of the bills being heard in committee this week. Now, why does it matter for committee hearings? Well, because committee hearings are where the public can provide comment. So you can go down, show up in person at the state capitol, sit across the desk 10 feet away from these legislators, tell them how you think about these bills. We've seen some incredible testimony from some great liberty minded Coloradans this year. So, really encourage people to get involved, be informed, and be empowered. I can tell you right now, these legislators down at the Capitol, they know that there's a group of liberty minded Coloradans who are organized, who are informed, and are showing up, not letting them get away with what they're doing. At the very least, we are going to speak to them, look them in the eyes, and tell them how wrong they are to try and take away our freedom. So, got to get involved, folks. This is one of the first steps to taking Colorado back is knowing what's going on in the legislature, participating in it, and having an impact. So we'll start here with bills of the week, and then we got 8 p.m. We got Representative Jarvis Caldwell, a freshman legislator, to give us some updates on some important bills, specifically around some of the immigration issues, as well as some other juice from the Capitol here. And then we'll continue going through the bills of the week because there's quite a few we want to talk about. And then towards the end of the live stream here, we'll talk about some of the bills we've been tracking for the entire legislative session. So some of the most important pieces of legislation, at least for liberty-minded Coloradans, the good, the bad, and the ugly, folks. All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So here we go. Bills of the week. So this is going to be what's heard in committee. And like we were just saying, this is how you can participate. You can provide a remote testimony over Zoom. You can show up in person. At the very least, you can call these committee members. The committees we're going to talk about, call them, email them, tell them what's going on. Let them know that Coloradans are watching their votes, watching what bills they're talking about. And let's put some pressure on them. I mean, it's the very minimum of what we need to do here.
Oh, 100%. I mean, every day you sit out how do I want to say, sorry about this, guys. Every day you have the opportunity to reach out to these guys. Please reach out. You never know what you could say that might change a legislator's mind. So please reach out. A lot of these legislators will respond with you, and you can build a dialogue with these legislators and really start to uh, create a real relationship with these people. So please reach out. That's what we ask. Reach out and testify. There's That's so much more impactful than a vote ever is on your part. Please reach out. Let them know how you feel, and you might change their mind.
Definitely, definitely. So let's jump into it. So the first committee hearing we want to talk about is going to be tomorrow, Monday, February 24th. Now, Michael, I felt that pretty much every bill being heard tomorrow in this committee is interesting for liberty-minded individuals, for libertarian types of Coloradans. This is a really big legislative committee tomorrow. It is the House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. It's meeting tomorrow, Monday, February 24th in LSBA. That's the Legislative Service Building, which is across the street from the state capitol, just on the south side there at 1:30 p.m. So at the very least, people reach out to the bill sponsors if any of these bills strike you as being important or interesting. So first one here, we're going to talk about House Bill 1170, and I really hope that Forest Mommy's on the call there because this is definitely a bill I know she'd be very up in arms about for sure. So House Bill 251170 is lobbying by nonprofit entities. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's some positives here, but let's kind of dig into it and see. I mean, just looking at the names on this bill, I mean, this Bo Snicker guy has been one of the most authoritarian appointments, another vacancy appointment, one of the most authoritarian legislators we've seen in recent years. Faith Winter, always acting in bad faith, that's for sure. And Eliza Hamrick, who's only back there because the Republican Party wasn't able to find a challenger in time for her. She should not even be serving there. So, bad news all around.
Hey, Brandon, that's a fantastic nickname for Senator Winter. Bad Faith Winter.
So, a tip for people out there, you can see there's a lot of information here on the bill summary, right? And then we're on the legislative website, leg.colorado.gov, folks. That is a resource for you to find out who represents your community, to find out what bills are being heard this week, to find out how your tax money is being spent. So let's look at the fiscal note. This fiscal note here is kind of a little shortcut, a little cheat sheet to give you some good information about the money, but also a nice summary, a nice description of what happens here. So this bill creates a new category of nonprofit lobbyist and exempts these lobbyists from the registration requirements for professional lobbyists if certain conditions are met. Now, Michael, lobbyists get a bad name all around, that's for sure. And then there's so much going on nowadays with these nonprofits, these NGOs having so much influence and power over our state government. So, what's your initial thoughts here that this bill is going to give these nonprofit organizations even a bigger seat at the table, and they're not even having to follow the same requirements that actual professional lobbyists have to follow?
Oh, it's absolutely absurd. I mean, I think it's a way for uh I mean, look at been going on over the last couple of years in Colorado with these NGOs. They're taking taxpayer money to do a service that basically these legislators or the city councilmen would absolutely get railed for if not lose their jobs. So these NGOs are basically providing a layer of protection for the government. So that way, the government can be here. You've got the layer of protection here, and then you got the NGOs doing everything they want to do with your taxpayer money that was taken from you without your consent. So at the end of the day, I mean, they're creating more and more rules for these people to trample on your rights.
100%. And so many of these nonprofits, like you said, are getting our tax money, right? So let's look at this bill here, folks. This is House Bill 1170. The bill creates a new category of lobbyist for individuals who lobby exclusively for a nonprofit entity and only as an incidental duty of the person's employment with the nonprofit. The bill exempts nonprofit lobbyists from having to register with the Department of State or file disclosure statements. Wow, look at that. Nonprofit lobbyists representing a nonprofit entity may only lobby 30 days in a fiscal year, of which only 20 days may occur during a legislative session. If lobbyists representing a nonprofit entity exceed these limitations, or a lobbyist otherwise no longer meets the requirements to be a nonprofit lobbyist, the lobbyist must register as a professional lobbyist. Finally, the bill requires that nonprofit entities employing a lobbyist report the names of each nonprofit lobbyist, the dates engaged, and the matters lobbied. The report is due to the Department of State within 72 hours of lobbying activity here. So, I mean, we've seen all of these nonprofits, like you were just talking about, Michael, pop up, featuring getting all this money from Jared Polis, the Gang of Four, Pat Stryker, and from national organizations outside of Colorado. So you can just imagine now there's going to be these nonprofit lobbyists just flooding the Capitol, trying to make even more of a noise. to support this, what I would suspect is an authoritarian and radical agenda here. So don't get me wrong, I like the idea of lobbyists. If anything, we do need more lobbyists down there because we need more citizens having representation down at the state capitol. I think that is important, but nonetheless, this of course has me very suspicious that we're going to have a lot of left wing authoritarian nonprofits get involved and have the little lobbyist badge be a little bit more recognized and able to cause some more damage down at our state capitol.
100%. I completely agree with you. I mean, another concerning thing is you recently you had the fiscal note open. This doesn't, I mean, there's nothing for us to kind of fall back on and say, hey, this is going to cost a bunch of this is going to cost a bunch of additional money for a state government that's in $1 billion shortfall. So we have to get down to the Capitol. I mean, especially if we can get down there and be in this specific uh committee hearing. I mean, every single one of these bills is a phenomenal bill um to testify on, whether you're for or against. I mean, there's a couple interesting bills in here that are pro liberty. This is definitely going to be one that's going to hurt Coloradans in the long term, particularly our human liberties. So we need to be careful. If we can get down to the Capitol, that'd be wonderful. And speak your mind.
Definitely. So let's stick with the same committee. There's so much going on down there in this committee on Monday. So House Bill 1089, it's something we've mentioned previously, but it got delayed. So we won't spend a ton of time on it, but it is a very interesting bill here. I think we talked about it last week, if I'm not mistaken. It looks like it's finally going to be heard this week. County mail ballot signature verification requirements. So this bill authorizes the county clerk and recorder to allow a team of bipartisan election judges rather than a single election judge to review mail ballots for the purposes of signature verification. So, I mean, relatively benign, good bill. It's more than likely going to die because we can imagine the Democratic majority does not like the idea of having a bipartisan election judges, especially in a deep blue district. That's definitely concerning. But nonetheless, this bill is such a small little step towards election integrity that maybe the Democrats, if any of them have any common sense left, could support this bill. This is such an innocuous bill that would help restore some of the faith in our elections. Definitely a good bill. From freshman Representative Chris Richardson, former county commissioner, and Senator Baisley there. What are your thoughts on this one, Michael?
I think it's a great bill. Democrats uh, love to talk about protecting our democracy. If they actually believed what they said, they would support this bill in a heartbeat. But clearly, there's something else going on behind the scenes, and they're not giving us the full picture. So, I don't think this bill's going to pass. But if I could be down there tomorrow and testify, I absolutely would. So, in support of this bill. So. Yeah.
Definitely encourage people to call, email, reach out to the members of the House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. And if you're if possibly able to testify, please do. It's in that LSBA building, like we just talked about. So another good bill there. Let's go ahead and move on. In the same committee tomorrow, a great bill. I know one we're all very excited about. If Colorado was a free state, we would see House Bill 1164. It would have been enacted years ago. Constitutional carry just recognizes the right of an individual who's legally able to own a gun to carry it concealed on their person without a permit. You shouldn't need a permit, pay fees, get fingerprinted, do all these extra hoops and costs just to exercise your constitutional rights. You're a free person. You should be able to carry a handgun on you concealed without asking the state permission. So, absolutely wonderful bill here. Happy to see Representative Weinberg carry this torch. For so many years, we've seen this bill of constitutional carry get introduced in the legislature. Of course, it gets killed because the Democrats have the majority and they do not want people to be able to defend themselves. They do not want people to carry guns. So, great bill. What are your thoughts on this one, Michael?
I think it's a phenomenal bill. I mean, I know sometimes we could be disappointed in some of the legislation that Rep. Weinberg sponsors. I know we've talked about that here in the past, but you know what? For as much as we might ridicule on Rep. Weinberg, this is an incredible bill. I am absolutely thrilled that Rep. Weinberg presented this bill. And if you can get down there, I would love to see as many people as humanly possible getting down to the Capitol tomorrow to testify in support of constitutional carry. There's no reason that the government should be forcing us to request permission to do something that we should that should not even be a thought in their mind. I mean, we have the human right to protect our to of self-defense. It's something that was not even something that the founders even considered to be a question at the time of the passage of the Constitution. So we should have absolutely have constitutional carry. We see other states pass it. Um, if you want to use phrases like a progressive bill, forward thinking, this is absolutely a forward thinking bill, considering what's going on in the United States of America. So if you can get down there, show the same amount of, if you show the same amount of passion for this bill as we do Senate Bill 3, I think that would make a massive statement. So if you can get down to the Capitol, that'd be wonderful. At least if you can't if you can't do anything else, submit a written testimony in support of House Bill 251164.
100%. We got Alicia Garcia, the Boomstick Babe, in the chat here on YouTube. And she says she will be there. The Second Syndicate, We the Second, Spartan Defense, the CFFLA, Alicia herself, and plenty more people. And she's encouraging people to join them down at the state capitol. Just looking at that schedule, I mean, folks, if you're going to go down and testify, there are so many bills to talk about in that committee tomorrow. You're getting your bang for your buck, literally. So if you're going to go down the state capitol and you want to have a voice, you want to get down there this year, tomorrow is a great day to do it. In this one committee hearing, you can speak on 5 bills that are extremely important to the liberty of Coloradans. And like you were just saying, Michael, House Bill 1164 is 100% a pro-liberty, great bill that people need to show up and support. And I loved what you said about how people need to show that same level of enthusiasm and excitement about good pro-gun bills and not just the negative bills. Uh, let's make a statement, do everything possible to support this bill, and get down there, people, if you can.
Absolutely. And let us know if you are able to go down there tomorrow. We want to hear from everybody who made it because it'd be awesome to hear that that room was absolutely jam-packed and they had to open up a second open up a second overflow room just because of how many people came to testify tomorrow.
Definitely. This is a great bill. I'd love to hear that. And please, people, post on social media when you're down there. We'll definitely get you a lot of reposts and likes and things like that. Great bill. Just go down and support 1164 down at the state capitol on Monday. Committee starts at 1:30 p.m. This bill will probably not get heard till probably 2:30, maybe even later than that. But show up early. You can speak on all of these bills. It's in the Legislative Service Building A, just across from the state capitol in that A committee room. They have 2 committee rooms there at 1:30. So hope people can make it down there. Please let us know if you do, like Michael said. And let's see what else is in this bill or in this committee hearing. Unfortunately, we have another anti-gun bill. No shortage of anti-gun bills down at the state capitol this year. These tyrants down there want to do everything possible to deprive us of our God-given right to self-defense. And in this case, they want to go after gun shows. Make no mistakes, folks. They want to shut down gun shows. They want to completely destroy the culture of gun ownership and try and turn Colorado into an authoritarian place where individuals who wish to obey the law are totally unable to defend themselves. This is House Bill 1238. Absolutely horrible bill that would require a gun show promoter to prepare a security plan and submit that plan to each local law enforcement agency with jurisdiction over the gun show. Absolutely ridiculous. Then the gun show would also have to have liability insurance, implement security measures, prohibit persons under 21 years of age from entering the gun show unless the person is accompanied by a parent, grandparent, or guardian. So again, another attack on the rights of 18 to 20-year-olds. For each customer who leaves with a purchased firearm, verify that each firearm sold at the gun show is delivered in compliance with the required 3-day waiting period and post certain notices at the gun show. So this is absolutely and utterly disgusting. Oh my gosh, and check this out. The bill prohibits a person from participating in a gun show as a gun show vendor if the person is not a federal firearms licensee, does not hold a valid state firearms permit, has been convicted, blah, blah, blah. So, there's plenty of people who show up and participate at the gun shows that are not selling guns. So absolutely and utterly ridiculous. This is a horrible, horrible bill attacking our right to not only the Second Amendment, but the First Amendment as well, our right to assemble, the right to engage in commerce. I mean, this is absolutely disgusting. Kathy Kipp has been on all of these gun bills this year. Junie Joseph and then Sean Camacho, freshman representative, such an absolute disappointment down there, totally wanting to destroy the rights of individuals here in Colorado.
100%, Brandon. I mean, just look at this. They're if they can't squeeze you out one way, if you are able to get through all the legal hoops, what they're trying to do is one other thing we should talk about is they're trying to make it so expensive for you to hold a gun show that the tickets required are going to be extremely expensive. It's gonna and at this point they're trying to price people from even attending. So I'm very concerned about this bill passing through. So if you're already down there, this is another fantastic bill to speak out against.
Definitely, people show up at this committee tomorrow. There's so many bills to talk about, and really voice your disappointment in these legislators, and tell them that this House bill is absolutely an infringement on our rights. Absolutely terrible. So moving on here, another bill, a very interesting, the last one being heard in that committee. Gosh, this committee hearing is going to be so long. It's going to be action packed. Please show up, folks. Get involved, support the good guys down there, build a network, build a community, meet other good people. And this bill here is House Bill 1231, also being heard in that same committee. Probably a good one. We got freshman Representative Rebecca Kelty, who won by 3 votes this last November. So definitely, she's trying to make a name for herself with House Bill 1231 to protect minors from sexual or pornographic content. This bill would prohibit an individual, organization, or entity from permitting a minor to attend events, performances, or activities explicitly involving sexual contact or pornographic materials, or exposing a minor to pornographic materials in any form, including digital, print, or broadcast mediums. I mean, it's hard to believe that this isn't already some sort of law where where children are being protected. Of course, you can't help but think of the drag shows or this or that, or a lot of these sexually explicit things that happen where kids are there. And yeah, it's an interesting bill here. Michael, what do you think on it?
I completely agree. I mean, this bill is not about infringing on quote unquote LGBTQ rights and I'm sure we're going to hear that frequently throughout the testimony or throughout the committee hearing. But this is solely focused on protecting children. And anybody who's not willing to protect kids from abuse should not be a legislator. I mean, I'm just thinking about the statement that Rep. DeGraff gave a couple weeks ago about predatory bills inside the Senate that the speaker did not appreciate whatsoever, and she forced a recess. So. Um, this is another one of those bills where it's going to expose the individual legislators at the Capitol, and we're going to see who actually cares about protecting children, who is going to virtue signal for certain individuals.
Yeah, good point. Good point there all around. Let's just look at that committee real quick. So this is that House State Civic and Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. So here's the people, folks, that are on that committee that you'll be seeing tomorrow down at the state capitol. Gosh, there's so many of them. But how valuable is this bill, Michael? Because like you just pointed out, and I'm really glad you did, all of these legislators are going to have a vote on whether they're willing to protect children from pornography or not. So to actually have a recorded vote on who supports protecting children and who actually supports giving pornography to children, I think is valuable. The voters need to know that. They need to be aware of it. And this is an important bill for that very reason. So we'll see. We'll see how the representatives vote, and it'll be very interesting. Folks, this is the kind of stuff you got to pay attention to for the 2026 election, right? Every single one of these state representatives on this committee is going to be up for reelection in 2026. So if you can be down there or live stream it or listen to the audio, keep track of who votes to expose children to pornography, and then you can use that in the 2026 election and let the voters know what happened. I mean, that's one of the big important things about this bill.
100%, Brandon. Couldn't agree more.
So that's what we got in that committee tomorrow. Gosh, it's such an important committee. Five big bills being heard. Really something to pay attention to, folks. They do live stream the audio, not the video. Unfortunately, they really should, but unfortunately they don't. But let's jump over to Tuesday. So Tuesday we got some more committee hearings coming up. Of course, folks, we're only giving you some highlights of the week. We're not going to tell you every single bill that goes through committee because there's just so many of them. Like we talked about, 497 bills this year are introduced so far. We can't spend all the time going through every single one, but hopefully we can highlight some of the more important ones for you and get you motivated and empowered to speak out, get involved, and have a voice. And share this live stream to people and get them involved. So Tuesday, February 25th, upon adjournment of the State House and House Committee Room 112, so that's on the first floor there at the Capitol, is a very controversial bill that's making headlines across the country and even internationally. And that's House Bill 1109, Gender Identity Certificate of Death. So basically, somebody could go to jail if they do not put the right gender identity on the death certificate. Now, of course, it doesn't necessarily reflect the biological gender or sex of that person, but apparently, whatever their preferred gender identity is, and if they put the wrong gender on there, somebody can actually go to jail. That's how insane this bill is. Insane, absolutely wild. That this is what our state government is involved in, is trying to force, let's read it here. The bill requires an individual who completes a certificate of death to record the descendant's sex to reflect the descendant's gender identity. So that's it, folks. They have to put the gender identity on the death certificate, not their actual biological sex. So absolutely insane. You know, I can imagine historians or anthropologists 1,000 years from now digging up some bodies and noticing the discrepancy here, but nonetheless, absolutely and utterly ridiculous. But here's the part that's crazy. Of course, individuals responsible for completing death certificates who knowingly violate these requirements commit a class 2 misdemeanor. So somebody could get a misdemeanor and potentially end up in jail if they fill out the death certificate with their actual gender and not their preferred gender. I mean, how absurd is this getting here, Michael?
This is absolutely ridiculous. I I mean, what are they trying to accomplish with this bill? This is a pure virtue signal, and they're going to try to impugn somebody and throw them in a cage if they aren't compelled to recognize if they are compelled to recognize something that's not scientifically accurate. This is absurd. I mean, this bill needs to get killed in committee. Do I think it will? I mean, who's all in the House and the House Health and Human Services Committee, Brandon? I'm very
Let's
curious who this is because
So on Tuesday, here's who's going to be voting on this bill here. So it's a packed committee. We have lots of people. Oh my gosh. I'm really happy Representative Bradley's on that committee because I know she's going to have some great comments. That's going to be a fun one to listen to. But yeah, unfortunately, we have some of the worst. Bill sponsor Representative Brown down there. Gosh, yeah, this is going to be ridiculous.
you know how you don't, if somebody puts their pronouns in their bio, you don't respect them anymore. He puts his pronouns on his lapel pin and walks around the Capitol. Remember, Brandon, when we went and testified for the egg bill? That's exactly what he was doing. So, I mean, how do you respect yourself when you're doing something as absurd as wearing your own pronouns on your lapel pin? There's nothing about this guy that tells you that he might be a woman or could have been a woman. I mean, he's a guy that's about our age. Absolutely absurd. I'm very curious how this is going to turn out. I'm very excited to hear Brandy Bradley, Rep Bradley. As you said, she's going to tear this thing to shreds. So I cannot wait to hear her take it to task.
Definitely. Yeah. Absolutely absurd bill. Absolutely ridiculous. And Colorado's, unfortunately the laughing stock of the entire country because they see a headline, oh, let's check in on Colorado. Oh, they're going to put people in jail if they misgender somebody on their death certificate. I mean, that's how absolutely insane things have gotten, folks. So if you can show up, speak out, and at the very least, go down there, provide some interesting commentary. I'd love to see Scott Shamblin show up for this one, do some good parody type of testimony. This would be a great opportunity for anybody who's interested in that.
I'm really hoping Scott comes tomorrow or Tuesday.
Well, we do have our special guest joining us this week here, so really appreciate. We have Representative Jarvis Caldwell joining us. Representative Caldwell, how are you, sir?
Hey guys, I'm great. How are you all? I'm really appreciating the show so far. Hey, can I jump in there and ask, is that a true thing that one of the representatives wears his pronouns? Because I have not noticed that, but I'm gonna look for it tomorrow because that's kind of
I
embarrassing.
I'm going when we went, I took a picture of it even. So I'm happy to use the party. I'll use the LPCO account and just blast it out there for the
Okay.
world to see. It's
All
pretty
right.
wild.
I'll look for it tomorrow. I hadn't noticed it, but I appreciate you pointing that out.
Not a problem.
Well, and of course, Representative Brown, Kyle Brown, there is a vacancy appointment, which it just so
Mhm.
seems that the worst of the worst end up getting appointed in these vacancies, and it's so unfortunate. But
Yeah.
Representative Caldwell, how are things going down at the state capitol this year so far?
I mean, if we're measuring it on how it's going for the people's rights and giving the people of Colorado actually some relief, I would say it's not going too well. But I was listening to your guys your highlighting of the bills coming up this week, and it kind of feels like it's just getting started, and it's only going to be worse from here. And I imagine you all and your audience was paying attention on Friday. I mean, we spent almost 6 hours on Friday talking about January 6th, right, which happened 4 years ago. And I think the Democrats thought that, well, we'll run this resolution, and if the Republicans fight us on it, this is going to look good for the Democrats. And I think we made them look really stupid, and we drug it out. And we let them know that we weren't happy about this. And I think about half the time we spent talking about how that this resolution absolutely does nothing. And so I think we're going to see a lot more late nights like that. And that was kind of the first one for the House starting right now.
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, what a total waste of time. But hey, I'm
Mhm.
happy they're wasting time if that's all they did was debate resolutions for 120 days and
Y-
and just make themselves, posture themselves for the election and not actually pass bills. I
Right.
think that's a trade-off we can make.
Yeah, and that's something just kind of the political insider side of this is like, you have to fight these things, but you also have to kind of be smart and strategic because the reality is if we didn't come in this weekend, but if you really have to measure how long you're going to fight certain things because if we spent the entire day on the resolution and we never got to the that ammo bill that we also debated, then they'd say, okay, well, let's come in on Saturday and Sunday as well. And then all of a sudden, now you may be having more bills on the calendar for Saturday and Sunday. So you're actually helping them sometimes when you come in on the weekend because they'll stack it with more bills. And so you always kind of have to make a measurement. Okay, we're going to fight this thing, but we have to be smart and strategic about how we fight it. And I'm happy to talk about that resolution or those bills as well. And I know you guys wanted me to come on to talk about the immigration bill and give an update on where that goes. And I'm happy to talk about that as well.
Absolutely. Rep Caldwell, first off, thanks
Mhm.
for coming on. We really appreciate you here coming on in on a Sunday night right before you have to go in for a very long, grueling week one more time. And we're not even, what, halfway through yet. So,
Right.
really appreciate you hopping on board with us. Uh,
Absolutely.
my first question is you initially brought up working with the Democrats, a
Mhm.
lot of grandstandings that you see that we can see very clearly when you watch something like the Colorado Channel, for example.
Mhm.
Uh, I also know from talking from recent interviews that you did with John Caldera.
Mhm.
You mentioned the fact that when you get these people, these politicians behind closed doors, it's kind of different. Can you
Mhm.
explain kind of the differences between what it's like to work with somebody out on the floor, out in committee, versus what it's like in kind of behind closed doors, so that way people can kind of get a taste of what it's really like being a legislator in Colorado?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the question. Yeah. So we did talk about this a little bit with John Caldera on his show, but here's the thing is they are colleagues. These are people that you're around at least for 120 days. And you have conversations with them. And if you look at our bills, I think the statistic is something like 80% of bills that go through the legislature are bipartisan. And so, as a Republican in the minority, you have to have a Democrat more or less. There's, I think, one bill I've seen so far that had Ryan Gonzalez and Carlos Barone on it that actually made it through with just Republicans. But for the most part, if you want to get a bill through, you have to have a Democrat co-sponsor. And so it's important to like keep those relationships. Like I'll go to war with you on the floor and fight you in committee and all those things. But the reality is if I have a really good idea for a bill that I think is going to help people, and there's a chance to get a Democrat on board with it, then I'm going to try to do that. And that's to me, that's what I'm supposed to do as a legislator representing my people. Is when I have good ideas, I need to work across the aisle to make sure those good ideas actually can become law. And so it's important to keep those personal relationships because even though I can't stand the ideas that they have on most issues, they're people. I completely disagree with them on the majority of things, but you have to keep that relationship to try to uh, get things done that are actually good and that are actually bipartisan. And so I think that's a big aspect to it where, again, you bring a crazy bill forward and they're always doing vote counting ahead of time before they bring a bill, and they'll bring something to you and they'll go, "Hey, I got this idea for a bill, and it's going to be in committee next week." And I'm like, "What is it?" And I always joke with them. I'll go, "Is it defund the police?" Because I'm not supporting that. And they'll most of the time they'll laugh. They'll go, "No, it's not defunding the police." I'll go, "Okay, I'll listen to it then." But there's just those certain issues that if it's an anti-gun issue, if it's a pro-abortion issue, just as a conservative, okay, sure, you can bring it to me, and I'll be cordial with you and tell you I think it's a horrible idea. I'm going to be a no on it, and then I'll fight you in committee. But uh, yeah, that's kind of how it works behind the scenes. Is you still have to be able to talk to them. But as far I can't speak for everybody, but I'm not going out after session ends or when committee ends. I'm not going out and getting drinks with them and things like that. Just they have their own lives and they kind of stick to their own circles, and I guess I probably do too.
That definitely makes sense. And just, kind of circling back a little bit to the resolution condemning the January 6th pardons, of course, I've, expected that so much of what the Democrats do this year is going to be in response to the Trump administration. And
Right.
definitely the immigration issue is a huge key component of that. So I'd love to hear some
Yeah.
inside information about how the Democrats what are they going to end up passing on the immigration
Mhm.
issue? And of course, it's very interesting because in your interview with John Killer, too, it's the idea of Jared Polis agreeing that violent criminals should be deported, they should be
Right.
arrested, they should be going after them. Of course, I'm sure most of the state legislators in the that are Democrats probably secretly support that. Of course, there's the socialist ones who absolutely do not support that. But your bill that you had this year,
Mm.
Representative Caldwell, House Bill 1140, I was really sad to see that one killed. Of course, not
Mhm.
surprised at all. But your bill would have required that people who are here illegally who have been convicted of violent or property crimes to be reported to immigration authorities. I mean, I thought that was in line with what the governor is looking for, so don't get me wrong, I'm not surprised they killed it, but what can we
Yeah.
expect overall about this immigration issue?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you letting me come on and explain. So, just to give you some more context there, I actually moved to postpone it indefinitely, just to give some clarification there. So, for the full context of it, you are correct. So, Governor Polis had said in his State of the State. Now, he actually said this a couple weeks before that, actually a couple months before that, right after the November election. He came and met with all the brand new. Uh, Elected legislators, right? So that we had like a bipartisan retreat for all the newly elected people. And he said, of course we want the criminal migrants deported. I went, oh, okay. All right. So then I started thinking, okay, I need to run a bill that has to target, the violent migrant criminals because I can hold him to that. Now, but it wasn't public when he said that. He just said it in a room of newly elected legislators. So when I heard him say in the State of the State, that he wanted help doing that. I went, wow, because at this time I'd already talked to his staff and let him know I was working on a bill. But he didn't name drop me like he had named some other people. So I was like, okay, well that's odd because he knows I'm doing this bill, but I haven't actually gotten support from his people behind the scenes. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe he is considering supporting my bill. And at the time, I'm not going to share the name of the legislator just because they didn't end up on the bill. But I did have Democrat legislator who was very interested in trying to help me behind the scenes with this bill in its original form. So if you look up House Bill 1140 right now, that's not how it originally was when I was working on it. It was way broader and it covered all felonies, right? So if you're a migrant and you get convicted of a felony and you're on probation, of any felony, you were covered. And I seriously, I thought I was going to get the governor's support because we were in talks with some of the different agencies trying to garner support. And then all of a sudden, like a day before my bill was due, like because you get deadlines for your bills, a day before it was due, they just completely ghosted me on it. The Democrat House member who was helping me and who was seriously considered putting their name on it said, "Listen, the governor is not behind it. That's the only way I can put my name on it. So I'm not going to be on it." And so that I went from seriously having a really good chance of having a good bill, an immigration related bill that targeted migrant criminals to now nothing. And you know it's going to be dead on arrival. So I threw a Hail Mary last minute and I said, you know what, I'm going to narrow the scope of this bill to just be so reasonable and hard to argue against that they're going to squirm at least when they kill it. So what I did was I took the Proposition 128 language that the citizens of Colorado just passed. And I took those crimes and I substituted those in instead of all felonies. The problem with that was because it was kind of a last minute Hail Mary, it narrowed the bill so much that realistically, even if it were to pass, it probably would only apply to a handful of individuals each year. So if you look at the fiscal analysis on it, it says there's 230 people a year who fall under those categories. They get felony probation for those specific crimes. And they don't differentiate because apparently they don't track it, the difference between actual Colorado citizens and migrants out of those 230 people on average a year. So realistically, that's the migrant side is probably a much smaller number. So even if the bill passed, it might only apply to 5 people. And so my consideration for postponing it myself was, and actually, as a matter of fact, this week on Tuesday in the Senate, we have a very comprehensive immigration related bill that's going to do what I was trying to do already. And that's Mark Baisley's running that bill. That's Senate Bill 047. So I definitely recommend everybody do that. That bill has a lot of support from sheriffs. I believe maybe some DAs are on board, maybe some chiefs of police. But you really have to consider there's a time and resource issue here. And I know because the gun issue is a big thing, and a lot of your guests, I think you mentioned Alicia Garcia talking about coming there and testifying on bills. The problem is you almost feel like every single week you're going and testifying on bills that have to do with the same issue. And so what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to take away a bunch of resources and time and bringing people down to the Capitol to testify on my bill when basically the following week we're going to have this Mark Baisley bill in the Senate that's going to do what I wanted to do plus a lot more. So that was one of my considerations. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to waste people's time to come down here and do this one when I think there's a much better chance on the Mark Baisley bill. So that's what I did. I postponed it, assuming this issue doesn't get addressed this year. I will be bringing something back, but I do think our best chance to address this issue is the Mark Baisley bill, which 047. I think it's going to be this Tuesday in the Senate State Affairs, and that's a solid bill that is going to completely do what I wanted to do, what my bill would have done and then a lot more. Um, and I know I've been talking for a while, but I wanted to make sure I threw in there something I tweeted about the other day. So when taking everything into account. So when I heard Governor Polis say what he wanted to do about, in the state of the state about the violent criminals, migrant criminals, and then my bill, and then he didn't support my bill, I remember telling people, I go, okay, there's two paths here. Either either the Democrats are going to keep saying that we don't have an issue, which that really backfired on them when they tried doing this. They tried doing this "we're not a sanctuary state" narrative a couple weeks ago, and they were getting so beat up on it. And people kept like showing them the 2019 bill and saying, this makes us a sanctuary state. What are you talking about? I think they realized they couldn't keep that up for long. So my other suspicion was if they're not getting on these bills with Republicans to address the migrant crisis issue, they're going to be doing something on their own. And it's probably not going to be good. It's not going to fix the problem, but they're going to say that they're addressing the issue. So something that I tweeted about last week that caught a lot of attention. I was having a conversation with someone at the Capitol, and I like to protect my sources, so I'm not going to say who it was. I was having a conversation, and they were asking about House Bill 1140 that I had postponed, and they said, I'll talk to you more about it next week. I'm working on the Democrat immigration bill right now, and I looked at them like with a confused look on my face, and I said, "What Democrat immigration bill?" And they were like, "Oh, never mind, never mind." And then they just like dropped it. And I was like, okay. And then that's when I tweeted out. I was like, I just got word through the grapevine that the Democrats are actually working on an immigration bill right now, which is obviously the reason that they're not willing to get on a Republican immigration bill or even work with us on it. Because if even if they don't like our bill, if they didn't like my bill, if they didn't like Mark Baisley's bill, they could have easily got on that bill and then said, "Hey, listen, if you want this to pass, you now have bipartisan support. We'll work on it with you, and then we'll make sure it passes." But they haven't done that yet. So I've always had a suspicion that they're doing something themselves. And then after what I kind of heard on accident this past week, they are doing an immigration bill, and I had no idea. And I asked around, none of the Republicans know what it is. So, they're going to do something. It's only going to have Democrats, and they're going to take credit for it.
So Rep Caldwell,
Yes, sir.
that makes me wonder if they won't work with you. They didn't. Polis said he did not like your bill. They
Mhm.
likely will not support Baisley's bill on
Yeah.
Tuesday, and they're coming out with their own bill.
Mhm.
Why are they so willing to work with Republicans on 80% of legislation that is passed, but on this bill they're not willing to sit down and work with Republicans to create a bipartisan bill?
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's a great question. I wish I had a good answer for it. I really do think that it is about taking credit for it. So I mean, they caused this immigration crisis, right? They just did. I mean, I can point you to the 2019 bill, and they keep saying, "Well, we're not a sanctuary state." But what the reality is if you read that 2019 bill, they're correct that it doesn't say this bill makes us a sanctuary state because a sanctuary state, I think, is more of kind of a political term, kind of like how they call semi-automatic rifles assault weapons. Assault weapons is not the legal official term. And sanctuary state's kind of the same thing, but it's like, what does the bill do? And what the bill does is what makes it a sanctuary state bill. So yeah, I think the reality is that they made us a sanctuary state and they keep denying we are one, but they know it's a problem. They just don't want to give us credit, probably because they know that if they do get a Republican on board, that we're just I mean, we very well may spend a lot of time criticizing them for creating the problem to begin with. I think the reality is it's going to be a bill that probably doesn't solve the issue, and because it doesn't solve the issue, they just know that, well, if we try to put a Republican on this bill, it's not going to last very long because once they realize that it's not going to fix the problem, they're probably going to pull their name off, and then they're going to have a lot of ammo to blast us on it. So we're just going to keep the Republicans off, and we're just going to put our own thing forward. They're going to fight us on it, and they're going to say it doesn't do anything, and then we can pass it without them because they have the numbers to pass it without us. And then they'll say, look, we put forward this bill to address the issue, and we didn't get a single vote of support from Republicans. So Republicans are just grandstanding about fixing this issue. When the reality is, if we do oppose it, and I can't say I oppose it because I don't even know what it is, but if we do end up opposing it, it's probably because it just doesn't do anything or have any teeth in it. But they'll play the game that we're just grandstanding.
I'm surprised that the left would want to gaslight you guys.
Yeah, I
That's
know, right?
shocking. Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
but just yeah, I think Friday for the people listening right here, the Senate, they had a long fight already on Senate Bill 3, which I'm a member on Judiciary, so that bill's going to be coming to us soon. But they had a long fight already on the floor. We had our first long fight this past Friday because we had the ammo bill as well. So we and you had mentioned a bill earlier talking about the 18 to 20, the infringements on 18 to 20-year-olds. And I believe it was the gun show bill you're referencing that's going to be in committee tomorrow. Again, like you're 18 years old and you can't walk into a gun show. Like that is the most ridiculous thing. You can raise your right hand, you can swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution, you can go off to war and die for your country, you can vote, you can go to prison, but you can't walk into a gun store or a gun show. I mean, I shouldn't have slipped and said gun store because I'm sure if that's not the case already, that'll be the next bill. Will be you can't go to a gun store until you're 21. I mean, these people are ridiculous, and it's just society is determined a long time ago that when you're 18 years old, you're a legal adult. So why the hell do we keep passing bills that keep raising the age? I mean, if you really want to talk about this, your brain's not fully developed till you're 25. Why don't they pass a bill that says you can't drink alcohol until you're 25? That would be very unpopular with a whole lot of young people, and they don't want that kind of backlash. So, there's no science behind it. It's just they're throwing out numbers. It pisses me off.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are getting really pissed off. Hopefully we
Mhm.
get this resurgence of this grassroots liberty movement here in Colorado. We see the community growing so much. There's so many people showing up to testify. But
Yeah.
Representative Caldwell, a big
Mhm.
question, what can people do to have an influence, to be an effective voice for liberty? What are your recommendations? I mean, you've been a legislative
Mhm.
aide, you've been the communications director for the House Republicans, and now
Yeah.
you're serving in the legislature yourself. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you've seen it all, you know all the different aspects. What do you think people should be doing with their time, their limited time they have to have a voice, to have an impact, and what can they do to have some positive pro-liberty influence on the state legislature?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that question. And this is a hard one because I know people have lives and you're just trying to go about your life without your rights being infringed on, and you hate it's frustrating that a lot of people have to take time. And the reality is when you're talking about these gun bills that have a lot of people signed up, I mean it's an all day affair, right? Like you've been up to the Capitol before. It's an all day thing because it's upon adjournment, so it depends how long when upon adjournment actually starts, depending on how long we're on the floor. You come up there and you're on a list of hundreds of people and you don't know when you're going to be called because there's no transparency really on the list. I mean, as legislators, we can walk up there and say, hey, where's this person on the list? And then we'll see how far. And sometimes we can get them moved around. But the reality is as a citizen, you just don't have any transparency there. It'd be nice if they actually published it, kind of like when you're waiting for medicine at the hospital and you kind of see a list where your name's out on the list. Maybe that's an idea. Maybe I have to run a bill for that or something. But now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, that's a good idea. You should have like a waiting order list so people can at least understand where they're at on it. But I mean, what I'm getting to is showing up man, that puts pressure on because here's the thing is, and I know a lot of people say, well, showing up is one thing, but also a lot of times they know how they're going to vote on it. And it's like not always though, because you do have moderate, and I use moderate really, really loosely nowadays because even the people who we consider moderate, the way they vote is not how a Democrat would vote 30 years ago. So I'm like they're moderate in the sense of today, but they're still very far left compared to a Democrat 20, 30 years ago. But if you're in a district where you won 53% of the vote to 47% of the vote, you're in a legit swing district, and your constituents did not send you there to do far left policies. You have a moderate district in a sense, right? They didn't send you there to do far left policies. So you need to put pressure on those representatives and senators who are in those kind of swing districts. But not only that, the more people that show up, the more the media pays attention, right? So when and think about it, when you have these gun control groups and you have when the high school march is over and there's like hundreds and hundreds of kids and I listen, I appreciate civic engagement and I appreciate kids paying attention because when I was a kid I did not pay attention at all. I had a lot of other things on my mind, so I appreciate people being civically engaged, but I don't really, again, I disagree with their positions on this, but it gets media attention. You go watch the local news that night and there's like 300 or 400 kids at the Capitol protesting about whatever the issue is. It gets media attention. And I watch the local news here I'm down here in El Paso County, northern El Paso County, and I was flipping through the news on Friday, and from what I saw, not one single Colorado Springs centric local news agency And I know these people, and I like most of them, but not one of them covered what happened on Friday. I think the only people that covered it was Fox 31, which is in Denver. We have Fox 21 down in El Paso County, and then CBS Colorado, which is based out of Denver. They covered what happened on Friday about the January 6th resolution, and then the ammo bill. But down here in El Paso County, it didn't get any attention. And so the only time I notice when it actually gets local news attention down here in El Paso County is when it's something big, when you have like SB3 and you have hundreds of people come out there. So you really guys, you got to show up. And then the last thing I'll say, because I know I've been ranting, the last thing is getting involved ahead of time before the general election, right? Because I know a lot of people say, well, I'll say, hey, are you doing your civic duty? And they'll say, well, yeah, I vote in November. And I'm like, okay, you understand, like, I mean, there's a process. It's a year before November starts, right? You already have candidates in the primary leading up to the primary in June. And then after June, then you have months and months, and it's like you just got to get people involved earlier on, and then that way, for one, you'll get better candidates. But that's a lot more time for door knocking and getting out the vote and trying to flip some of these districts, because it's just the reality is we got to get it more back to balance. We're not going to be in the majority for quite a while. It's just the reality of it when you look at how many winnable districts there are and what the current makeup is. But the closer we get to that 50-50 mark, and there are a bunch of seats that we can flip next election cycle. The closer we get to 50-50, those committees, those 11-person committees, right now they're like 8 Democrats and 3 Republicans. As we start winning back seats, all of a sudden, now instead of 8-3, it's a 6-5 committee. And then you only have to flip one moderate Democrat to kill a really bad bill. So that's kind of the most important thing, that we need to be doing over the next 2 years.
uh, Rep Caldwell, over the last few
So,
years, we've seen a lot of internal struggles. I know I'm not
mm,
necessarily a Republican itself, but I mean, I've been watching, paying attention to Colorado politics for a while.
yeah.
And one of the struggles that's been disappointing to see is how much of a rift we see within the GOP. There's
Mm,
not really unified ever for everybody to come together in the sense of these Democrats are absolutely wreaking havoc in Colorado, and it's hurting all of us, regardless of
mhm,
whether you're Republican, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, even
mhm,
other Democrats. So my question to you is, how should we get together? How is the best way to start bringing these people together? I know that we can go ahead. Yes, I know that we can campaign in individual districts, but how do we
mhm.
create that greater sense of unity within the GOP or within Colorado as a whole and really push back against the garbage that's happening down at the Gold Dome?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wish I actually had the legit solution for it, because I would definitely be doing it right now. I think what we have to do is obviously, if you listen to the Caldera interview and kind of follow the issue recently over the last year or so, that there's been a lot of disagreement, I guess you could say, within our own Republican Party, and it really it does start at the top. Like we need the state Republican Party and then the county Republican parties all working together, including the legislature, their elected members to actually get together. Like I would love it if I could like call my county party chair, which I may be able to now. We just had elections, so we have a new county party chair, but the outgoing county party chair here in El Paso County, I still haven't talked to her since before before I announced I was running for office in December 2023. She's never once reached out. We had some back and forth on an email one time, which it wasn't a very nice exchange. But other than that, there's never been, hey, the county party wants to know how we can help you or how you can help us or anything like that. Or hey, we're having a meeting coming up. Can you come over here and give us an update on the legislature like what I'm doing with you guys right now? The county parties never reached out and said, "Hey, you're one of our local elected members. How can we bring you in here so we can raise awareness for this issue for you guys fighting down there?" Because the party members would like to know, and then the public who shows up would like to know. There's not that kind of relationship right now. So it really does start at the top. We need to whoever's going to be the next chair of the state party needs to come together. I appreciate what the Libertarian Party did in some of these races. I seriously think that we wouldn't have Gabe Evans right now if not. And I think Gabe Evans, who I was just talking to earlier today, he's a fighter. And I think he's a great representative for Colorado, and I love having him there. I knew he was a rock star early on because I was his communications director when he was a brand new freshman legislator in 2023. And I was like, after I got to know him for just a few minutes, I was like, holy crap, this guy is sharp and he knows what he's talking about. So whenever I'd have like really, really hard subjects and like the New York Times would call and want an interview or the Associated Press, I'd be like, I got the guy for you. And I would put Gabe Evans in front of him every time. And so I appreciate, the Libertarian Party kind of working with the Republican Party. And I wasn't inside on what all that stuff that was going on. But I understand that there were talks and things that happened there. So I do think we have to come together because the reality is um, we're just we're at a disadvantage right now, unfortunately, and a big part of it is a money disadvantage. The reality is when you look at the spending in some of our elections, I want to say when Polis was running for reelection, I mean the spending gap was crazy. It was like 10 to 1 or something like that. I want to say it was at least 10 to 1 as far as the Democrats outspending the Republicans. It was ridiculous. I don't watch that much TV, but when I would have the TV on, just if you left the TV on for an hour, you would see like 15 Democrat commercials for like against Heidi Ganahl or in favor of Polis or whatever the situation was, or for pro-abortion issues. And then you would see like one kind of conservative commercial or maybe for a conservative issue or something like that, for a conservative issue or for a conservative candidate. But there's just a huge disparity there. So I don't think we're going to beat them in the money side of it for quite a while, but I think we can outwork them. I think we can get people together, bring, come together when we can between Republican, Libertarian Party, work together where we can. And we have a lot of young people, and we just need to get out there knocking doors and getting out the message because a lot of people don't realize. I think what happened at the beginning of this year in January 1st, when people started going to the grocery stores and seeing empty shelves and seeing the dramatic spike in prices. My wife's one of them. You would think me being a legislator, my wife would be like super in tune with what's going on politically. She does not. She's not a very political person. She's a conservative. She's Republican. She's not a very political person. And she goes to the grocery store around the beginning of the year, and she was like, "Why the hell are the shelves empty at the grocery store?" And I'm like, "All right, let's sit down for a second. Let's talk about this." But I think that's really starting to wake people up, and people are like, "What the hell is going on in the state of Colorado?" Because if you go next door to Kansas, just an hour away from where I'm at, if you go over to Kansas, they don't have empty shelves over there. So you keep telling me it's the bird flu. Okay. Yeah, the bird flu it is a thing. It is affecting states. It is driving up the prices to a certain degree. But even in states where you have bird flu, I was just in Florida not that long ago. They have bird flu there, and you can get 64 eggs over there. I mean, it's a huge, ridiculous looking carton for like $5, and they have bird flu in Florida. So, I don't think it's just the bird flu. And the federal agencies have already acknowledged that it is because of the regulations we're putting on our industries. But I think people are finally starting to wake up, and I hope they are. But that's a long-winded way to say we just got to come together and quit the nonsense of fighting when we agree on 95% of the issues.
Absolutely. I appreciate your words. I mean, one of the best things I've ever done politically was work on that deal. So I'm incredibly
Yeah,
grateful that we were able to come together and do something that was going to benefit Colorado. And I mean, I do think that not only did uh Rep Evans get his win his seat because of the deal. I also think Rep Kelty won by 3 votes because of the deal as well. And I think you can make the
absolutely.
comment. You can also make that statement for others,
Yeah,
for other races as well. So I'm
for
really
sure.
hoping that we can make deals that, uh, you know, uh, we'll say gentlemen's agreements,
All
for
right.
lack of a better phrase, or
It's a good phrase.
sign the
Yeah.
pledge. Yeah, nothing. Yeah, nothing. I mean, that deal's not. There's nothing like signed in law. I mean, you're
Right.
basically writing your name down, saying, this is a Liberty Pledge, saying, "Hey, I'm willing to adhere to these principles
Right.
and watch me over the couple years, and let's work
Absolutely.
together in the name of liberty." So,
Right.
really grateful for what you guys have done.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Yeah, it's great having Rebecca Kelty there and not Stephanie V. Hill, who is just a ridiculous person in general. And I hope she gets the help that she clearly needs. And I think I spent more time campaigning for Rebecca than I did myself because I think I live, the statistic I saw, it's the second most Republican district in the entire state of Colorado. And so after the primary, obviously I still walked and door knocked and did meet and greets and stuff in my community, but I did spend any extra time I had going and helping Rebecca. And whenever I'd go to events like Ava Flanell's and Dragon Man's big machine gun shoot, we all spoke there, and I think I spent more time talking about how important it was to get Rebecca elected than I did about my own self because Stephanie Vigil is I mean, as radical left as it goes, and she was representing a district that had never been a Democrat district before, and thankfully we were able to get Rebecca in there. And again, I appreciate you guys for seeing how important that was and how close it was. And like 3 votes, I always give Rebecca shit because I went and cured ballots for her. Right, so there was a bunch of ballots that got rejected, and I think I cured like 6 or 7 ballots for her out of the 10 that they gave me. And so when she ended up only winning by 3 votes, I was like, I'm literally the reason you won because you wouldn't have won without my cured ballots. But the reality is it took a lot of us. I mean, we showed up, and there were dozens of us that showed up to get out there and cure those ballots. And like that's one of those situations where when we say every vote counts, it literally did in that race. And so again, yeah, I appreciate the deal you guys had there and all that you all have done for Liberty.
Definitely. We do have a couple questions from the chat here.
Yeah,
Somebody says, sounds like Representative Caldwell is doing the right thing. Let him know we like that. So that's pretty
cool.
cool.
Tom, I appreciate it.
Uh, Definitely. Somebody said, let's see here. Question: I see some antlers over his right shoulder. Is it a muley or whitetail?
It's a it's an elk that
Oh, nice.
yeah, so my family's from Kentucky, and what we used to do at a certain time of the year, and I can't even remember. I guess it's in the fall, maybe. We would go up on our four-wheelers up in Appalachia and ride around on the mountains and look for antlers. If you found a nice matching set, I think you could get like $500 for them, which when you don't have a lot of money, $500 is a whole lot of money. And what they would do is a lot of times the people up there they'd make knives out of them, right? They cut off the points on them, and that would be the handle. And then you obviously they install a blade in it. But so we would go up there and look around, and so that was one that I had found when I was a kid. So. Yeah, yeah, it's good times, good memories in Appalachia, which is it's the mountains, but it's not quite like Colorado mountains. A lot different, but just it's good to be around the mountains regardless.
Perfect. So last question here from the chat. Who
Mhm.
does Representative Caldwell consider to be the leader or voice of the Colorado Republican Party?
The leader of the voice of the Colorado Republican Party. Man, that's a good question. I'm going to take my political stance on this and say that my minority leader, Rose Puglisi, is my voice, at least in the legislature. And then also Ty Winter is our assistant minority leader. I love that guy. He's like a brother to me. Um, eh, the thing is the state party chair should be the voice. I obviously I've had some disagreements with the state party. They did endorse my primary opponent, and I have a lot of disagreements with how they did things. But I think this just leaving it there, which is the state party chair should be the voice. I try to be the voice for House District 20 and represent them and keep them informed. But yeah, there's no single voice. I mean, it's kind of when we look at like the national level, you go, okay, well, Donald Trump is the president. He's the highest elected Republican there is. Like he is the party leader, the voice. When you bring it down to a state level, I mean, I think we all still kind of considered Trump to be the voice in a sense. So that's a good question that I don't know if I gave a good answer to it, but right now I'm going to stick with my minority leader.
Awesome. Well, I think we're gonna let you get back to your night here. Any last questions, Michael?
I think that's everything I have for now. Rep Caldwell, I really appreciate you taking the time on on a Sunday night to sit down, discuss immigration, discuss how it is at the Capitol. So,
Yeah,
great to
absolutely.
hear every insight.
I love giving the insider stuff. So anytime you guys want to have me back on, I like talking about what it's actually like behind the scenes, and all the politics. It's not as quite as crazy as House of Cards. I don't think anybody's getting pushed in front of trains, but there is a lot of games being played behind the scenes. But I appreciate what you all do, and I just want to keep encouraging people, stay engaged, keep putting the pressure campaigns on the Democrats, especially online and in person, right? Like bringing attention every time you reshare our stuff. Like at least for me, it never goes unnoticed when you guys reshare stuff, and because you have bigger followings than I do. I think that probably any of us do. So that helps us get out the word, because then somebody who follows you sees it, they share it, and then all of a sudden now it's being covered in Fox News like it was on Friday. On Friday, that January 6th resolution, it got covered on the front page of Fox News. So, we're doing what we can to try to bring attention to it. And so what you guys do definitely helps us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Representative Caldwell. We really appreciate you. Keep us informed and encourage everybody to follow you on X and
Yeah,
keep an eye on what's going on, and look forward to hearing some more inside information about what's happening down at the legislature.
appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Awesome. That was great. I mean, that was so much fun. Definitely a very intelligent person who's does believe in liberty, and has some great ideas about how to achieve it. And love really seeing that insider stuff. I want to know the background, the behind the scenes. I mean, that's for me is always something that I find extremely interesting.
Oh, I agree. It's so interesting to hear what it's like to be a legislator. We see from the outside, we see what they typically show us. So what we see from the outside, what the media wants to show us, or what we might be able to see on social media, that's usually it. So to get actual insight from a legislator and what it's like to uh try to negotiate deals so that way you could bring a liberty-minded bill to Colorado, I think that's absolutely fascinating.
Definitely. So folks, we got a lot more going on. Really appreciate everybody joining us. We got 36 people watching live right now, and would happy to answer any other questions you have in the chat. So I did see that question there. Somebody asked, Fly Pilot Explorer asked, who should be the Republican candidate for governor? I'm sure Representative Caldwell would probably have stuck to the political answer of saying whoever the party decides, but definitely follow him on X and really appreciate. But folks, we have so many other bills being heard this week. All we did earlier was get through Monday and the first Tuesday committee hearing. But Michael, you ready to jump back into some of the bills being heard down here this week?
Let's get into it, Brandon.
Perfect. So here's a big one, a big crime issue, right? I mean, crime's out of control in Colorado, retail theft. We hear about it all the time. Businesses are suffering. Businesses are closing, especially in the metro area, because they can't deal with this property crime violations, all this theft. So Representative Bradley has a solution for that. At least partially here is House Bill 1141, gift card and retail property crime penalties. Representative Bradley and Senator Carson there. So interesting. Let's go ahead and take a look at that fiscal note, kind of see what this bill does. Use the little cheat sheet here to get that summary. So House Bill 1141 would mandate, let's make that a little bit bigger for the audience at home there. The bill would mandate a sentence to the Department of Corrections for burglary, robbery, or theft from a store if the offender has prior convictions, and adds gift cards to the offense of theft and forgery as described below. The bill requires a sentence to the Department of Corrections if a person is convicted of burglary, robbery, or theft from a store and has prior convictions in the last 4 years for any two offenses of burglary, robbery, or theft from a store. The sentence imposed pursuant to this provision must be for at least the midpoint of the presumptive range. And then it adds the gift cards there. So, I'm okay with this bill. I, of course, I'm very skeptical of a lot of criminal reform to increase penalties, to increase laws on people. We're liberty minded, we're libertarians. We don't like to see more laws. But at the same time, if somebody's violating property rights, if they've been convicted multiple times of theft, then, I do think they should, get the book thrown at them. What do you think, Michael?
I completely agree, and I'm glad you're on the fiscal note itself because not only is this a good bill that's going to protect Coloradans' property rights, but you can also see this is also good for the state of Colorado as it's going to reduce the amount of full-time employees in the state, and that's incredibly important when we have a $1 billion budget shortfall.
Yeah, this bill it decreases revenue, which we love to see, and decreases expenditures. I mean, looking at 26, 27 there, you're talking $1.6 billion. I guess there's an increase there, excuse me, in the general fund expenditure increase, but nonetheless, it could save money in the long term, I would say, because you have less recidivism, less people committing these crimes. And, I'd have to say that, yeah, people who are convicted of these crimes should receive a big sentence here. Well, let's see here. This is interesting too. The bill creates a new factual basis for the existing offense of theft by adding gift cards to the crime of theft. From 21 to 24, 3,685 individuals have been convicted and sentenced for theft with a value of less than $300, a petty offense. Gosh, 3,600 people. I guess that's over a 3-year period, really. I guess if I'm reading that right, so over 1,000 people a year. The fiscal note assumes the majority of gift cards have a value of less than $300. Of the persons convicted, 2,372 were male, 1,296 were female, and 17 did not have a gender identified. Demographically, 3,064 were white, 270 were Black, African American, 225 Hispanic. Nonetheless, pretty interesting there. I always like looking at the statistics just because it's interesting to see what's going on there. But nonetheless, I think this is a good bill that libertarians should support, that Coloradans should support, because the crime is out of control. The state government is not doing a great job. Local governments are not necessarily doing the best job to try and go after some of these retail theft. And so I see a good reaction to going after criminals who are actually committing victim crime, like crimes that create victims, right? This is not a victimless crime. Retailers do need a little bit more protection, it seems.
And one other thing to remember from a libertarian perspective, we want to see a healthy economy, and property theft is particularly on a corporate level is going to hurt the local and state economies. So I mean, something like this in a state where um what are the crime statistics again? We're number one in burglaries and carjackings. We're number one in, it's not burglaries, is it? But we're high up there. We're one of the, I think, the seventh most dangerous state to live in as a whole. So we need to do something to protect our community in Colorado. And I think and bills like this are definitely gonna help protect us against violent crime.
Definitely. So really encourage people and show up to support this one. Representative Bradley's been a previous guest on here. She's definitely always reaching out to the libertarians to create this bridge to get people who are actively engaged. She's a true fighter for liberty down there. So please support her bill. When you have a good liberty leader down there, it's really important to support their bills. Let's show up and support these people who are trying to fight for us. We can't just be reactive all the time. We have to be helping and supporting the good people down there. So this is going to be Tuesday upon adjournment in the House Judiciary Committee in House Committee Room 107. So really encourage people to show up Tuesday, do remote testimony, reach out to the committee members, and of course the bill sponsors to let them know that you appreciate the bill. I mean, how great would that be for them to see that? Because like Representative Caldwell was telling us, things are tough down there, So a positive note to some legislators who are trying to do the right thing to protect retailers here in Colorado. I think that's a good thing to do as well. Perfect. So that's what we got in the Judiciary Committee. A couple more bills that I wanted to bring up here I thought were pretty interesting. This Anti-Discrimination Act, it's been on our list for a while, but we haven't really dug into it. So, of course, gosh, Weissman, Doherty, Dirty Doherty, and this Zoke are some of the worst down there. I mean, their names are in so many bad things. So you can imagine, Michael, I'm sure, after years of hearing about all this kind of stuff, decades even, we as soon as I hear anti-discrimination, you want to support something that's anti-discrimination, right? But we just know that it's going to be some sort of mandate, some sort of extra control that the government's going to have over businesses, over people, and it's not going to be a good thing. So um, I'd love to get into this one, and let's look at that fiscal note again. I just love looking at the fiscal note here to see, of course, multiple full-time employees the state government's going to need, millions of dollars spent. This bill modifies the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act by consolidating and expanding remedies for individuals facing discrimination, particularly those with disabilities. Specifically, it extends the deadline for filing a discrimination complaint related to public accommodations from 60 days to a year. Oh gosh, so here's more litigation. Here's more people suing each other and going after people because of this for a year. It permits individuals to seek attorney fees, costs, monetary damages, non-economic damages up to $550,000, fines of $5,000 per violation, reduces non-economic damages that a small business is liable for by 50% if they correct the violation within 30 days and conforms adjudication standards with the Federal Americans with Disability Act. So, I mean, we've seen the Civil Rights Division, the Department of Regulatory Affairs. I mean, we've seen them go after Jack Phillips of Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, who didn't want to bake a cake. And the state government said, we are going to destroy your life because you don't want to bake a cake. We saw the woman who didn't want to make the website for somebody's wedding she didn't agree with, and the state had to go all the way to the Supreme Court, and she won money, taxpayer money here in Colorado, to go defending the state government against this poor woman. And she thankfully won money, but it stinks because that's our tax money. But here we go, another opportunity for the individuals to use this weaponized government on this basis of discrimination to go after businesses and individuals. Really, what are your thoughts on this one, Michael?
Oh, I think I think you make a great point. More opportunity to force somebody to force a Jewish person to bake a Nazi cake. Essentially, this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's a complete stomping of our First Amendment rights. I mean, we have freedom of association. If somebody does not necessarily want to associate with another individual, they should not be compelled to based on some arbitrary standard that will not be even upheld if it were flipped around the other way. If let's say let's flip it on this other flip it around. Let's take Jack Phillips for example. If Jack Phillips wants to go to another store and let's say he wants to buy some uh, baking accessories, there's no problem in the eyes of the state of Colorado for somebody else to kick Jack Phillips out of their bakery store if he because of his religious viewpoint. But if you flip it around, Jack Phillips is a bigot and he has to fight. He has to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to take his battle all the way to the Supreme Court. It's an absolute double standard of the law, and this stuff like this should be struck down instantly.
Yeah, definitely. Small business owners have it hard enough, folks. Colorado's becoming a very difficult place for people to do business. And now we're going to have more opportunities for people to sue them, to go sick the state government on these small businesses. And so this was interesting. These assumptions part are always interesting here in the fiscal note. So the CCRD, that's that as we looked up here, the Civil Rights Division received 133 complaints in fiscal year 23 to 24, complaint filings for public accommodations discrimination. The fiscal note assumes that 70% of aggrieved parties do not file a public accommodations complaint due to the 60-day filing deadline. I'm not sure about that. I don't think it's because people, 61 days later realize they could have done something. They probably just don't, whatever. But nonetheless, the bill's deadline extension is assumed to increase the number of complaints by an additional 310 filings annually. So now we're talking, 450 nearly filings with the Civil Rights Commission basically going after small businesses because they don't have public accommodations. I mean, from a free market perspective, if you want to boycott a business that doesn't treat people with disabilities correctly, that's the right way to do it. Discrimination is bad 100%, but it's not the role of the government to be going after people, spending millions and millions of taxpayer dollars, hiring full-time employees whose whole purpose here is to go after these discrimination types of things that small businesses are already struggling with. So I think this is a horrible bill. Of course, it's just another weaponization of government. And I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad what these authoritarian leftists have done to our state, to the country as a whole, to this whole idea of discrimination, of just weaponizing that term. They're weaponizing this against people who disagree with them. And of course, this is mostly dealing with public accommodations and disabilities. But at the same time, we don't need the state government more involved here. If somebody has a poorly run business that doesn't have the best accommodations, I think the market can help take care of that, get those people out of business or force them to make better decisions because they're losing market share. Maybe a competitor comes in who is better for better public accommodations, and they can put these people out of business. They can advertise on that. They can run their competition out. We don't need the state government involved in these things. So yeah, absolutely ridiculous, total waste of time. And unfortunately, it's probably going to cause some serious damage to some small businesses across Colorado.
Completely agree.
So this bill is being heard Tuesday upon adjournment of the House in House Committee Room 107. That's in the House Judiciary Committee there. So, gosh, just so tiring. All this tyranny. Tyranny is tiring, right? But
And
I thought,
that's the point. They
right,
want you to tire out and give up, but we can never give up, Brandon. We've got families, we've got brothers, sisters, kids, wives, parents. We can never give up, Brandon.
100%. 100%. We can't give up. We got to keep fighting. And here's another bill being heard in that same committee. And I thought this was interesting. Of course, seeing the names on it makes me immediately suspicious. But House Bill 1212, um, the term public safety, another term that the government is just so weaponized against society. We got to protect the kids. We got to protect this. We have to infringe on the rights of adults doing this. And of course, Manny Rootnell, absolutely unserious person who's extremist and an anti-meat extremist, anti-energy extremist, thinks he can run for Congress, totally laughable. And Representative Matt Soper, whose disappointments mount every day. House Bill 1212 concerning public safety protection from the risks of artificial intelligence systems. Now, I don't know about you, Michael, but unless it turns into Skynet and we have Terminators walking down the street, I'm really not too worried. I don't think there's a real public safety concern about artificial intelligence, but what do you think?
I completely agree. I mean, I don't think we have to worry. I mean, there might be certain things that might happen that might not necessarily be the most beneficial from time to time, but that doesn't mean that this sci-fi like Skynet's going to come down from the skies and absolutely enslave every single one of us as in a fight between the robots and the humans. I mean, it's absolutely kind of absurd. So, I mean, I think this bill is not necessary. I don't think it's necessary whatsoever.
So let's get to the bill. So House Bill 1212, this is what these legislators think is going to protect public safety from artificial intelligence. The bill prohibits developers with foundation artificial intelligence models from preventing workers from disclosing certain information and from taking retaliatory actions against workers who make disclosures. Workers are allowed to disclose information about a model that indicates the developer is out of compliance with applicable public safety or security law. So this is just regulation, more regulation on artificial intelligence. Of course, public safety and security is totally arbitrary. Our state government does a poor job of defining that. Engaging in activity that poses a substantial risk to public safety or security, or making or has made false or misleading statements concerning public safety or security to risk management. Developers must adopt policies and procedures that comply with the bill's requirements. Aggrieved workers may commence civil actions to seek relief. Finally, the bill does not limit other worker protections provided by this law, of course. So, I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's another bill that's going to hurt the tech industry in Colorado because now anybody who's working with artificial intelligence would have to say, oh, well, we have to have these certain compliance things, and everybody's got to take this webinar and do this little training and sign off on the employee handbook about these applicable public safety artificial intelligence disclosures, blah, 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 blah. It's a silly bill. It's ridiculous. And the fact that these legislators think that they're protecting the public from artificial intelligence because somehow this is going to get out of control, I think is absolutely ridiculous.
The good news is we don't see a prime sponsor from the Senate on this one, so I think we can get this one killed, but we will see what happens in the future. There's still a lot of legislative session to go.
Definitely, definitely. So this bill is being heard Tuesday in the House Judiciary Committee upon adjournment, House Committee Room 107. I want to listen in on that one. I want to see what they're having to say. I really am curious as to what the bill sponsors think that this harm, that artificial intelligence, that people are developing software. It's just software, right? AI is this the buzzword. It's really just software that people are developing that is somehow putting public safety at risk, and they need to have protect the whistleblowers and this and that. I don't know. We're going to see more like this, folks. Unfortunately. Um, yeah,
One last thing I want to say about this bill. Rep Matt Soper is one of he is the prime sponsor in this one again.
Yeah, he's such a disappointing. He should just be a Democrat. He's not a good Republican at all.
Agreed.
Point a comment. Finest City Cycling says Colorado is becoming so entrepreneur hostile. 100%, absolutely entrepreneur hostile. Fly Pilot Explorer points out there's something called non-disclosure to protect a company's IP. So of course, this is kind of trying to go around that and get the government involved in these things. So ridiculous bill. bad stuff. But let's go ahead and move on to Tuesday. The very powerful, I think at least, some of the most important bills always go through this committee, the House Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee, meeting Tuesday, February 25th, 1:30 p.m. in LSBA. House Bill 1189. Now, I don't know about you, Michael. Well, I do. I'm sure I know this, but everybody hates paying these registration fees. Everybody hates paying more money when we register our plates every year. It's absolutely ridiculous. I already own the car. Why do I have to pay the government every single year just to drive my car on the roads I'm already paying taxes on? Absolutely ridiculous. But we got Tisha Moraro here, whatever her name is, who's got one of the worst pictures on the legislative website. It says that her bill is basically going to raise the fees for the following by $4 and allow these county clerks to retain the $4. So I'm sure that the county clerks are behind this bill because they love getting more money from people. They never have enough money. So we got to increase fees. We got to keep going to the taxpayers. They never want to cut costs. They never want to do anything to streamline their business, and I almost said business, excuse me, but their department. But instead, the department must increase these fees to account for inflation, but the department may not increase a fee more than 5% a year. This bill goes on and on and on. Let's just look at that fiscal note here real quick, make this a little bit bigger for people. But the bill raises vehicle registration and titling fees and gives the additional revenue to counties and adjusts rules for titling of certain vehicles. So bad news there, folks. It will cost the state some money. The state doesn't get any money out of it because it's going to go to the counties. We saw this, the $4. And then the Department of Revenue must increase these fees annually for inflation. So sure, we always see this, right? It's just $4. It's just 29-cent delivery fee. It's just this, it's just that. And then it'll go, oh, well, next year, guess what? It's going to go up because of inflation, and it's going to keep going up and up and up. The bill increases the fee for the issuance of vehicle titles, duplicates, and copies by an additional $4, getting the county clerk to have that money. The bill also allows vehicle owners for any reason to choose the month of their vehicle's expiration. Under current law, this is only available for owners of multiple vehicles so that each vehicle expires on the same month. And it also allows county clerks to set fees for the shipping and handling of all motor vehicle documents. So here we go, more fees. The bill requires the DOR to include a statement of salvage disclosure on the title of salvage vehicles. The disclosure must include the reason the vehicle is salvaged, a statement from the owner, and a signature there. Rebuilder's title for a vehicle considered a collector's item. The bill allows the DOR or county clerk to issue a rebuilder's title if the applicant is able to provide evidence of ownership. The vehicle is later made roadworthy. The owner may receive a title by surrendering the previous ownership document there. So there we go. More fees, more costs. What do you think about this one here, Michael?
I mean, it's completely unnecessary. I mean, these I don't necessarily even understand why this bill is going into effect, because that's the state county fees are something that should be set by the counties, not even the states. So or not even the state itself. So I mean, I don't understand what Tishamar is trying to do with this bill even. Um, and if this, I mean, yes, it's quote unquote, it's supposed to result in at least $37.7 million in additional revenue to counties statewide, but this isn't even going to do anything for the state itself. It's just going to cost the state more money. At the end of the day, I think this is something that should, excuse me, these fees are something that should be set on the local level, not the state level.
Sure. And now we see another $37 million pulled out of the economy, right? I mean, we're struggling.
Mhm.
People are struggling enough. $4 here, $4 there. I mean, it's becoming ridiculously expensive just to have a vehicle. And, maybe that's the point. Maybe they just don't want us to have vehicles anymore. That would not, I'm sure that's the wishes of some people in our state government.
Absolutely.
So also on Tuesday, so big busy week, folks. We got a lot of bills going on this week. Tuesday, February 25th, 2 p.m., Senate Committee Room 357. This was a big one. Just want to cover it briefly. Senate Bill 147. So people who don't know what PARA is the Public Employees Retirement Association. All the state employees across Colorado who've been there for years get a PARA instead of Social Security, basically. That's where their money goes to. So Senate Bill 147 is a massive reworking of the board. There's some good stuff here in terms of expanding open meetings laws, term limits for the members of the boards. And I really like that open meetings laws portion there. But nonetheless, huge aspect in terms of creating more transparency for PARA. So I would say this is probably a good bill. It actually doesn't cost the state anything, but it does designate Para as a local public body under open meetings laws, establish term limits for trustees, requires that certain financial information be posted on the website. So I did a video with Senator Pelton, Byron Pelton, last year talking about this bill. It's something he'd been looking forward to or looking to push forward. So, in a bill to kind of open up the books, provide more transparency in government. I think that's a good nonpartisan or partisan win there. Nonpartisan win that we should be potentially in support of. So, look at the sponsors on this bill. This bill is going to probably fly through the legislature. Of course, we could expect some amendments because, I'm sure Para doesn't necessarily want, maybe they agree with everything in this bill, maybe they don't, but there's going to be a lot of stakeholders involved who are associated with the state government who can modify this bill. But overall, I'd say a good bill here.
One thing I do want to point out with this bill is if you look at while it does enact term limits, if you skip a term, you can hop right back on the board. So um, that's one thing that I was a little concerned about, but I do like the fact that they are bringing in term limits, getting new people on the board, and at least refreshing the board to some extent.
Definitely good points there. So this bill's being heard Tuesday in the Senate Finance Committee, Senate Committee Room 357 at 2 p.m. For anybody, there might be people watching who are members of Para or have family members that maybe their retirement's based off of it. This is one to watch if that interests you. But let's move on here. And we'll try and fly through some of these here because time is going. But here's the bill Representative Caldwell mentioned earlier being heard Tuesday, February 25th, Senate Committee Room 352 in the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, Senate Bill 47. This is the enforcement of federal immigration law. So this seems to be the bill that most of the Republican caucus on both chambers are getting behind as their signature immigration bill, which makes sense. A lot of what he said. But of course, this bill is very interesting. I love, and I'm sure this was a strategic choice here to really put in previous laws that the state legislature passed to make Colorado more of a sanctuary state, specifically Senate Bill 6 from 2006, Senate Bill 90. This bill basically repeals Senate Bill 90. So interesting bill there. Of course, we'll see the Democrats kill this bill, but yeah, I'm sure it's going to be an interesting committee hearing, and it's an opportunity for the Republicans to show they're trying to protect Colorado from illegal immigrants, but at the same time, the Democrats are going to be, I'm sure, killing this bill. Any thoughts on this one?
I agree with you. I don't see it. I don't see this one being successful, but just like we've seen in previous attempts by the Republicans. But I'm very curious to see how this one goes, especially if the Democrats have their own. Uh, if the Democrats are going to push their own immigration law, and we'll see how much teeth that thing actually has.
So Tuesday in the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee at 2 p.m. Pretty interesting stuff there. And that same committee, another bill, it's going to be interesting, I think. This is kind of that Doge bill, Senate Bill 135, Colorado Government Efficiency Authority from freshman Senator Carson and freshman Senator Representative Brooks. So this bill, let's just go to the fiscal note because there's a lot there. It's a little bit easier to digest. The bill creates the Government Efficiency Authority, which will examine state agency operations, recommend efficiencies to the governor and General Assembly. Hey, that sounds like a great idea. Doesn't look like it costs anything. This bill creates a government efficiency authority. As a statutory public entity, the authority is charged with examining each state agency's operations, personnel, and mission to identify more efficient uses of government resources. It may hold public hearings, make recommendations to the governor and General Assembly, may accept gifts, grants, and donations, and federal funding to pay for its operation. There'd be an 8 board member, 5 voting members from the private sector to be appointed by the governor and legislative leadership, 3 non-voting members, including JBC staff director, Office of State Planning and Budgeting, state auditor or their designees. Board members serve without compensation. I mean, this sounds like a great idea. It looks like they've done some great work to figure out who should be on this board because you're pulling people from the legislature, you're pulling people from the governor, you're pulling people from the Office of State Planning and Budgeting, the state auditor. I mean, these are the people that you definitely would want at the table when you're talking about doing this type of thing. But pretty interesting stuff. Pretty interesting stuff. What do you think about this, Michael?
I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite bills I've ever seen get introduced into the legislature here in Colorado. Now, do I think it's going to be successful? No, but at the same time, I think it's something if we can support it, absolutely get down there and support. one thing to call out is in this is specifically the $1 billion shortfall because the governor mentioned it in his State of the State address. We have that $1 billion shortfall. If there's going to be anything that's going to help the state of Colorado stay within its means, it's going to be a government efficiency authority or a Coloradoge, if you want to call it that.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, how cool would that be to have this, trying to make the government more efficient? Of course, I don't like the government, so I don't want them to be efficient in anything necessarily, but nonetheless, hey, saving money, reducing waste, reducing full-time employees, these are all things to move Colorado in the right direction. I love this idea. This is a great idea there, and I'm really happy to see them kind of latch onto that Doge type of thing, Department of Government Efficiency. And yeah, so you could do wonders. So this is a committee I'd love to testify on in support of this bill. I think this could be a really fun one, and it could be a really good opportunity for people to have a voice and get involved. So if you're able to get down there Tuesday in that state Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, Zoom in, sign up for testimony. Uh, Let us know in the comments if you don't know how to send up for testimony. We'll kind of show you at the end there. But yeah, good bill, good bill.
Hey,
Love to see it. Go for it.
one last thing I want to say. I wonder if we could get Aaron Lamb to testify on this one because he helped implement his own Doge within the free city of Keensburg, about 45 minutes away from Denver. So I think that might be a great opportunity to showcase what government efficiency authority could do for Colorado.
Yeah, good point. Good point. That'd be awesome to see. Moving on to Wednesday, folks. This is a busy week. We're in the thick of things down at the legislature, a lot going on. So, Wednesday, February 26th, upon adjournment of the state Senate and the old Supreme Court, the Health and Human Services Committee. I thought this one was interesting because it's just another example of the state government really using this green agenda to create more costs, make it harder for businesses. And of course, now they're going after batteries, which how ironic is this? They want to move everybody to electric, get rid of oil and gas, but now they got to regulate the batteries. So this Senate Bill 136 battery stewardship program basically require an organization. The bill requires an organization defined in the bill as a battery stewardship organization. Then every 5 years, they'd have to submit the executive director of the Department of Public Health a battery stewardship plan, which is the plan for collection, transportation, processing, and recycling of certain batteries. On or after August 1st, 2026, a producer selling, making available for sale, or distributing certain batteries or battery containing products in or into the state must participate in and finance a battery stewardship organization that has submitted a plan. So you could keep reading this, but really a retailer would be prohibited from selling, offering for sale, distributing, or otherwise making available for sale certain batteries unless they're part of this battery stewardship organization. So what we're talking about is reducing competition, increasing costs, and regulating our batteries. I mean, come on, folks. It's never ending. Things need to change in our state government because you have little do good legislators like Lisa Cutter, Kyle Brown, Rebecca Stewart saying, oh, yeah, these batteries are toxic. So let's start regulating them. And at the same time, trying to force everybody into batteries, making life even more unaffordable for people here in Colorado.
I
What do you
compl-
think about this one, Michael?
I completely agree. I mean, I just wish Kyle Brown would spend more time focusing on what would make things better for Coloradans than his own pronouns to really come up with proper bills that would help
There you
us.
go. There you go. Yeah. I mean, you're going to see massive regulation of these batteries. And come on, folks, we're
Hmm.
moving in the wrong direction here. But let's go ahead and move on here. Still more to cover. So this is Wednesday, February 26th. Thought this one was interesting. And I kind of like this one. This is Senate Bill 143 in the Senate Education Committee, 1:30 p.m., Senate Committee Room 357. Extend prohibition on school facial recognition. So right now, it's going to be sunsetted and then this would continue it. So in current law, there's a prohibition on schools contracting for facial recognition services that is set to repeal on July 1st, 2025. The prohibition contains an exception for a contract executed prior, but the bill removes the repeal and creates new exceptions for contracts here for educational purposes. Oh gosh. So they'll allow facial recognition for a product, device, or software application that allows for analysis of facial features for educational purposes in conjunction with curricula. Come on. And for a product, device, or software that allows for the analysis of facial features to identify a person who's made a significant threat against a school or its occupants to the school, identify a missing student when there is reasonable belief that the student is still on school grounds, or identify an individual has been ordered by the court to stay on school property. So
And
are you kidding me? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say that last bit right there, I could see that being the way to create a bill that looks like it's sounding like it's going to protect our liberty and our privacy, our particularly our privacy rights, yet at the same time using that last little piece of legislation to say they're going to protect our security. Therefore, they're going to completely undermine those same said amendment privacy rights that we have.
Yeah, 100%. Now, there is one good little caveat here in the fiscal note. It says schools may not process facial maps or other biometric identifiers of any person without obtaining opt-in consent from the individual and their parent or legal guardian. These consent forms must contain description of how the facial identification data will be used. So, I mean, at least there's that where parents and kids have to opt into it. But nonetheless, I mean, so ultimately, I guess kind of a good bill. I mean, it's interesting. We talked about AI earlier. Now we're talking about facial recognition. It's stuff that it's going to continue to keep going, continue to keep happening, and it's interesting. We got to pay attention to it and maybe find the pro liberty angle to support solutions to some of these issues.
100%, Brandon.
Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and move on here. We're moving still on Wednesday in the House Health and Human Services Committee, folks. This is one that's getting a lot of people up in arms. I've received emails about this. I've seen social media postings about this one. This one is another bad one. House Bill 1220, regulation of medical nutrition therapy. So this bill would make it harder for people to get nutrition advice. Really, it's creating this another state hurdle that people have to go through if they want to provide be a dietitian, be a nutritionist. You have to get more license. You have to get a license. You have to pay for it. I hate hate occupational licensing. It's bad stuff. So, and I say, hey, or maybe I ask somebody for some advice about diet or nutrition, and they're saying, well, I'm not licensed. I really can't tell you. Who's that helping? Who's that helping? If people don't want to take their advice, they don't have to. This is ridiculous. It's a horrible bill. Absolutely super disappointed in Senator Pelton. Senator Byron Pelton, he's been on the bat on so many of these terrible bills this year. It's really disappointing. Same with Representative Hartsook. Who needs Democrats when you have Republicans like that? You got Senator Mullica and Representative McCormick, of course, some of the worst of the worst on the Democratic side. And of course, you get the Republicans joining in here. So, I mean, we do not need a dietetic, whatever, nutrition practice act for the regulation of dietitians and nutritionists in DORA. We do not need this regulation. We don't need licenses for people to give nutritional advice. What do you think, Michael?
I completely agree. I think about which there's been so many bills I can't remember. I think it was the Kratom bill that Senator Pelton sponsored, and I know he was scared of full on assault that would happen from a legislative push in the if I remember correctly, it was he was concerned about a ballot, correct? About some sort of ballot initiative that might get placed, or was it a
Um,
more serious bill that might full out criminalize kratom itself?
I don't remember exactly on that portion of it. I remember we read some of what he said, but I'm not entirely sure there. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was still a bad bill nonetheless.
Yeah, and I was very concerned about that. This is another one from Senator Pelton. Disappointed to see. A lot of times he is a good fighter in Colorado, particularly if you look at what he did for Senate Bill 3. That being said, this is another a bad, disappointing bill to see him on. There is no reason to criminalize somebody because they want to help somebody else get healthy. It's an absolutely absurd bill. We need to fight this thing. I'm just hoping that there wasn't some sort of outside force that wanted to do something even worse if they didn't put this legislation forth.
I mean, look at this. This bill will create a new offense of practicing as a dietitian or nutritionist without a license. You're going to get a class two misdemeanor. I mean, that's insane. You want to give people nutritional advice, and if you're not licensed, you can freaking go to jail, have your life ruined. Insane. They're going to get hundreds of thousands of dollars in registration fees to get all these people to get background checks and to be part of the system and register with the state so they can provide nutritional advice. I mean, this is a total attack on the freedom of health. It's the opposite of this Make America Healthy Again, this MAHA movement. And so disappointing to see these Republican legislators sponsor this bill. And really, frankly, disappointing from some of these Democrats too. They should know better than this. I mean, they're totally attacking the idea of nutrition and people making their own decisions. I mean, it's absolutely and utterly insane, super disappointing. And 1220 is definitely one of the worst bills that's been flying under the radar this year. And hopefully, there's some good public outcry on this one.
Completely agree.
But let's move on. We still got a lot to cover, folks, and it's getting late. We're on Wednesday in the House Judiciary Committee, House Committee Room 107, 1:30 p.m. One of the best bills of the legislative session. This is Representative DeGraff and Senator Baisley's bill, criminal asset forfeiture. Now, we had Representative DeGraff on previously weeks ago to talk about criminal asset forfeiture. It is one of the best bills to be introduced this year in the state capitol. This bill would basically eliminate civil asset forfeiture and require that a defendant is convicted of a crime in order to forfeit their property. I mean, this is what it should be. They should not be able to go after people's property unless you've been convicted of a crime. Civil asset forfeiture has been abused. It's been a revenue source for police, giving them an excuse to go after people, throw them in jail, and confiscate their wealth for their own purposes. So I can't applaud Representative DeGraff and Senator Baisley enough for House Bill 1067. Criminal Asset Forfeiture Act is one of the best bills we've seen this year.
I agree. Let's hope we can get people down to the Capitol. I know we're asking for a lot this week, but there's a lot of good bills out there. Then there's some really terrible bills that we have to fight. So if you can get down there and support this bill in some way, we'd really appreciate it.
Please, people, if there's something that you want to do to get involved, show up Wednesday, do remote testimony, submit written testimony, but do remote at the very least. Show up in person if you can. Reach out to the committee members on the House Judiciary. Tell them to support this bill, House Bill 1067. It's Wednesday, Judiciary Committee, 1:30 p.m., House Committee Room 107. They're at the ground floor in the state capitol, folks. Please show up and support one of Colorado's Liberty leaders, Representative DeGraff, and support one of the best bills we've seen this year. Also Wednesday, another probably a good bill. Let's take a look at it here. This is in the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee, Legislative Service Building A, 1:30 p.m. Landlord procedures for removal of tenants. And I was excited about this one because Representative Woog is on it, and he's been pretty good down there doing some good stuff, trying to repeal fees, trying to make really address that cost of living for Coloradans. And Representative Jackie Phillips, from everything I've heard, and I could be wrong, don't get me wrong, I don't want to give her too much credit, but is a little bit more moderate than some of her colleagues there in the state house. So not that that's hard to do, folks, don't get me wrong, but you got to take any victory you can get. So basically, this bill would clarify that a landlord can take such actions, such as terminating a lease, if there is another legal reason, and the landlord is not taking the action solely because the landlord is owed one or more late fees. So we've seen the total opposite of this legislation come through this year and last, from the Woodrows, the Mabreys, those people, for lack of a better term, to be politically correct, going after landlords, attacking this idea of private property, the idea that an individual can make a voluntary contract to live on somebody else's property. And so this bill seems to be moving in the right directions to kind of give landlords a little bit more legal protection and push back against some of what we've seen. What do you think, Michael?
I think it's a good bill. I'm honestly surprised to see a Democrat on this, considering the way Mabry and Woodrow have kind of they've really kind of quartered the quote unquote democratic market on thought for tenant and landlord legislation. So I'm happy to see something else come out of the Democrats, and Dan Woog has been a fantastic legislator so far down at the Gold Dome this year. So very happy to I think a bill like this could potentially lead to um a better Colorado if we have bipartisan bills like this. And I know we've ripped on Senator Pelton a little bit lately. We don't have a prime sponsor for the Senate. Maybe this is something he could hop on to and maybe help out. So I'd love to see some positive feedback and from Senator Pelton or some other legislator in the Senate. So let's get
Nice.
this one put through.
100% completely agree there. Looking at the Senate Transportation and Energy Committee, Wednesday, February 26th. This is one you brought up, Michael, Senate Bill 137, this greenhouse gas credits for water quality. So it seems like they're creating, I mean, go ahead and take it from here.
But essentially, we don't have enough time, but this I would essentially call this Colorado cap and trade. I know cap and trade is something that's absolutely killing Canada. It's something that Republicans like John McCain used to advocate for back in the day. I don't know if you remember in 2008 when he was a proponent of cap and trade policies. But this is something that this is in my opinion, another version, a small version of cap and trade for Colorado. So I'm very concerned about seeing. I'm very concerned about this bill, particularly. The good news is it only has one prime sponsor, uh, and it's Senator Simpson. The disappointing thing is Senator Simpson is a Republican, so it's very disappointing to see somebody like that pushing this type of legislation.
Definitely. We don't need greenhouse gas credits. We don't need to play this game. We don't need to be doing this and trying to get these trying to say, well, let's use that money for water quality. Like everybody wants better quality water, but we don't need to be playing this game of creating a fake market, an artificial market for greenhouse gas credits. So thanks for bringing that one up.
No problem.
Perfect. So we got State Civic and Military Veterans Affairs Committee. Here's another immigration one on the Democratic side. So House Bill 1244, the Welcome Reception and Integration Grant Program. And I've actually talked about this program previously last year because this is a way that the state government hands out money to their nonprofit entities, their NGO friends, uh, to help bring in illegal immigrants to Colorado. And that's part of the idea with this bill. So this bill expands the eligibility of migrants receiving services through the statewide welcome, reception, and integration grant program. So there we go. I mean, minimal fiscal impact because it's not necessarily spending more money. It's just giving that money to more people. So the statewide welcome reception integration grant program in the Department of Labor and Employment awards grants to community-based organizations. There's your nonprofits or politically connected NGOs that provide culturally and linguistically appropriate navigation of state services to migrants, right? You got to get them on the dole. The bill expands the population of migrants eligible by removing the requirement that they must have arrived within the last year. So now it does prioritize people who've been here in the last 3 years. But basically, the idea is they're going to give more of that money to more people, and I can see why they're doing this. In my mind, there's probably less illegal immigrants coming to Colorado than there was before a Trump administration. So they're saying, okay, we're not going to. There's going to be less in the 1 year period, but the 3 year period, let's go ahead and keep giving the money back to those people because that there's still that group out there. So, any thoughts on this one, Michael?
I mean, I constantly am harping on the $1 billion shortfall, but I really do think the $1 billion shortfall is one of our best cards that we could play, and I think this is a perfect example of a way we can kill a bill with the $1 billion shortfall. Because if we're looking for reasons to scrap costs, reduce costs of the state budget, I think this is a fantastic reason to kill this bill. When this is doing
Definitely.
good, yeah, this is going to do the opposite of what we're looking to do in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, if they, unfortunately, we have that Democratic majority, but that'd be a program to cut. Is this grant program? We don't need our tax money going in that direction, if you ask me. So Thursday, I just want to briefly mention House Bill 1077, the backflow prevention devices requirement. I know it was mentioned briefly in previous weeks, but it's finally getting its committee hearing. So there was the blunder, as Pundit Pete, a friend of mine, had mentioned. I interviewed him last year when he was running for state house, where basically the state government kind of screwed up and made it so only licensed plumbers could deal with backflow installation and inspection and so and so. This bill kind of reverses that. So it's a step in the right direction. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's more regulation tied into this. This bill has kind of been through the ringers. It went through all the way through the House and is now hearing its first Senate committee hearing, but I still wanted to bring it up. This bill, I'm sure, will pass and go into law, but just wanted to bring it up just because it's something we've kind of been keeping track of. That's being heard on Thursday. And then let's two more here. Great bill. Really excited. This is another great committee. Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. Some two interesting bills here. Permanent reductions to state income tax. That is wonderful. Thank you, Senator Carson, for sponsoring Senate Bill 138. Basically reducing the state income tax, which would be wonderful. Let's take a look at that fiscal note. The bill would reduce the state income tax from 4.4% to 4.25%. And then starting with tax year 2035, eliminates the state income tax. Yes, three cheers for that. This is something our governor supports. Of course, the Democrats in the legislature are not going to deal with it. But look at this: $18 billion return to the economy, return to the private sector, return to the people of Colorado. The biggest the biggest kind of stimulus package out there is to get rid of the state income tax. This would be absolutely wonderful. Would love to see it. Would love to see. I mean, just look at those words. That just makes me so. That puts a smile on my face. The bill eliminates the state income tax. Three cheers for Senator Carson for this bill.
Absolutely. I love this bill. I would love to see this thing go through. I don't know if we can get this thing to get this bill to get pushed through, but I mean, especially since it doesn't have any other sponsors than him, but I want to see this go forward, and I'd love to see some people testify on this one as well.
100%, folks. Lots of good bills being heard this week. Lots of bad ones too. But if you can show up Thursday, if you're in the area, if you can do remote testimony on the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs, show that there's public support for eliminating the state income tax. That's what we need. We have to shift the narrative away from these authoritarians who want to take every penny they can and say, no, people want to keep the money they earn. People want to keep the money they work so hard for. They want to be able to retire sooner, provide a better life for their families, take more vacations, spend less time at work. Those things all come from getting rid of the state income tax. So please, people, if you can, Thursday, Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, Senate Committee Room 352, upon adjournment of the state Senate. Hope people can tune into that one. And then one more in that same committee, Senate Bill 136. Here we go from Senator Pelton and Representative Gonzalez. Expand the deduction for retirement benefits. So basically, this would remove the caps on the deduction for amounts received as pensions and annuities, allowing any individual, regardless of age and income, to subtract the total amount that the individual received as pension or annuity income from their federal taxable income. So basically, lets people keep more of their own money, especially if they get a pension or annuities. So that'd be wonderful. And I love seeing the negative fiscal impact there. Less $500 million less state revenue. Yes, please. Thank you very much. Good bill. Love seeing it. Would love for people to support this. Individuals deserve to keep more of the money they earn, especially if you got a pension or annuity that you've been putting into your entire working life. You deserve as much deduction and lowering that tax burden as much as possible. So great bill there. Two great bills in Thursday on the Senate Committee Room 352. But we got one more hearing Thursday afternoon, 1:30 p.m. A bill that was supposed to be heard previously, so we have talked about it. But good pro-liberty bill, House Bill 1055 from Representative Brooks to repeal that firearm dealer requirements and state permit. Definitely a good one. This was an egregious infringement upon the rights of gun dealers to have to create new registration schemes, new fees, new costs of doing business in order to sell people their constitutionally protected ability to bear arms. And this bill would be a great thing to repeal that bill or repeal that from last year. So we saw that House Bill 1353 passed last year, the state firearm dealer permit requirements. This bill would repeal that. So pretty straightforward, pretty specific, but look how much money they're taking $3 million out of the economy through this registration scheme, through these permitting requirements for a gun shop. Absolutely ridiculous, absolutely terrible, absolute infringement. And hopefully, I mean, in a better world, in a free state of Colorado, this bill would pass. This wouldn't even exist, of course, but nonetheless, great bill, House Bill 1055. Would love to see people show up and support that one.
Go to your local. Not only should we get people, regular citizens out there, but we should also get small-time gun store owners and employees to go to the Capitol on this one. Let them know about the bill. Ask them to take a couple hours if you can't go down to the Capitol yourself, at least zoom in and remotely testify.
100% would love to see people testify in support of this bill. Thursday, February 27th in the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee, House Committee Room 112 at 1:30 p.m. So folks, I mean, this is a lot of information. Great thing about these live streams, they're recorded. You can go back and watch the video, find some information. Hopefully you can testify on a couple bills this week. Show up, speak out. But we do have the bills we've been tracking all session. I mean, Michael, if you got time, I'd love to fly through these real quick.
Let's fly.
All right, let's fly real quick. And people, you can watch it later. House Bill 1005, the film festival still doesn't have a date assigned. The price gouging has passed this or is going to be heard on the House Floor, Monday, February 24th, the absolutely ridiculous House Bill 1010. Law enforcement whistleblower protection, 1031, no date yet. The nuclear energy bill, 1040, will be heard Monday on the House floor. So interesting there. You can watch the Colorado channel, see what's going on the House floor. And Michael, just jump in, interrupt me if there's any of these you want to talk about.
Absolutely.
We talked about criminal asset forfeiture this Wednesday, the repeal firearm deal requirements this Thursday. Protections against child rape, Representative Bradley's bill, no date yet, still signed to judiciary as of today. House Senate Bill 5, the anti-worker bill, the pro-union bill, passed the Senate. Unfortunately, as we saw last Friday, that was part of that marathon session with Senate Bill 3. The same day, it is on to the House. So, of course, it's going to go into committee there. We'll keep you updated that way. Enforcement of federal immigration law this Tuesday, talked about that. Senate Bill 20, tenant and landlord law enforcement, sicking the attorney general on landlords. It was laid over in judiciary, so it's not no reassignment yet from what I saw. Senate Bill 3, everybody's been asking about that one, of course. That is the horrible, horrible gun bill, the worst gun bill Colorado's ever seen. It did pass the Senate last week and is introduced in the House, assigned to judiciary. So we will see the House judiciary. And everybody's saying March 3rd. We'll, of course, talk about that next week. We'll see who we can get on to talk about that one.
Now
Senate
is
Bill,
the opportunity.
yeah.
Oh, one thing. Now is the time to go ahead, go into that judiciary committee, email every single one, every single person that you think might be persuadable. There are some Democrats that you can persuade. Every single one of these, with the exception of, I believe, the Senate Bill 3. I believe every single one of these big assault weapons bans has had a Democrat flip. It was a party line vote in both, which was both Pelton B, Pelton R, and then Weissman, Gonzalez, Sullivan, and then Senator Ball. Party line vote. That's the only time we've had a party line vote on a assault weapons van or any style version of an assault weapons van. This is going to be similar in terms of a papers please bill where essentially they're going to force everybody to who has a semi-automatic weapon to register themselves as having a firearm in their possession. So very, very
Yeah.
concerning bill. Make sure that you raise your concerns via email now. Reach out and as well as call your local representative or the members on this committee that you think you can persuade.
Well said, 100%. Senate Bill 33, prohibit new liquor licensed drugstores, one of the bad Weinberg bills this year, did pass the Senate, is introduced in the House, assigned to the House Business Affairs and Labor. It wasn't on this week's schedule. One of the worst bills we've seen with cannabis, with marijuana this year. Unfortunately, Senate Bill 76 is an absolute disaster. Another disappointing bill from Senator B. Pelton. Basically, the worst cannabis regulation bill we've seen it does have a date of Tuesday, March 4th in the Business Labor Affairs Committee there at 2 p.m. We'll talk about that next week as well. But people, that's another one. Get involved now. If you care at all about the rights of individuals to make their own decisions in terms of their consciousness or whatever they want to take, marijuana or natural medicine, then this bill is bad news. The protections for users of social media. We saw that bill pass out of committee last week, Senate Bill 86. Shameful behavior from Lisa Frizzell and Hartstuck. That's coming up on the Senate floor this Monday, February 24th. We'll see who votes for it on the whole floor. And then we got the digital vending, the vending of digital assets. That's the Bitcoin ATM one. Senate Bill 79 did pass out of committee, is now going to be heard on the Senate floor this Monday. Senate Bill 77, Soper and Rich's bill to basically make it harder for people to get access to what the government is doing. Senate Bill 77, admitted out of committee, will be heard on the Senate floor Monday, February 24th at 10 a.m. The regulation of Kratom bill as assigned to appropriations, no date yet. House Bill 1089, county mail ballot signature verification. That one's being heard tomorrow. We talked about that. House Bill 1006, turning school district property into solar gardens or affordable housing, passed the House. Unfortunately, it's in the Senate now, assigned to Senate Education, not on the calendar yet. House Bill 1133, requirements for sale of firearms ammunition. Of course, that was the big fight, this last fighting in the state house that we heard. It passed on second reading. So Monday, February 24th, it's going to be passed on or voted on third reading. So we'll actually get a recorded vote to see which state reps support the idea of stripping rights away from 18 to 20-year-olds. And that'll be interesting to see. So keep an eye on that in the House floor Monday, February 24th. Talked about House Bill 1141, the gift card property crime. Here's the one I think that Representative Caldwell talked about, where Representatives Barone and Pelton were Republicans. It did make it out of committee, actually. It did make it out of the first committee. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's to a different committee now, Finance, to register and drive surplus military vehicles. So that did make it out of its first committee, is on another one being heard Thursday. Just didn't have time to talk about it this week, but at least wanted to mention it. A horrible House Bill 1089 or 1093, excuse me, limitations on local anti-growth land use policies, did pass the House, introduced in the Senate, and is assigned to local government and housing. House Bill 1113, the basically banning grass for apartment buildings, will be heard on the House floor. Unfortunately, did pass out of House committee. Will be heard on the House floor Monday 24th. Gosh, a lot going on. House Bill 1100, requirements for filling certain vacancies. That's Representative Luck's bill to start dealing with some of these vacancy appointments. No date yet. No change there. Bad one, House Bill 1247, county lodging tax expansion, basically increasing the amount of taxes that motels will have to collect to fund affordable housing. No date yet. The anti-discrimination law we talked about. The transparency laws. No, this is a good one. This is the bill that, if you watched my interview with John Caldera, he was talking about. It's a great bill to increase government transparency laws, to repeal that open meetings law they passed last year that took away open meetings for some of the legislative business. It has been assigned to committee. No date yet. Hopefully we get some good showing on that one. The gun show bill we talked about. Healthcare provider right to exercise conscience. I'm thinking that's a good one with Senator or Representative Luck on it. No date yet. Parental consent to treatment of a minor. No date yet. Soft closing of alcoholic beverage establishment. That means that you can serve alcohol until 2:30 instead of 2. No date yet. The peace officer questions during traffic stop. No date yet. So a lot of these haven't changed. Here's Representative Gonzalez's bill, the Tamale Act, as he calls it, the Colorado Cottage Foods Act. No date yet. House Bill 1232. Representatives Luck to allow people to have some liability or people to be able to go after people who restrict their rights to self-defense. Good bill there. No date. The cultivated meats one, kind of an interesting one there. No date. The smart meter opt-in, I like that one. No date yet. Keep an eye on that. House Bill 1262, regulate private security officers. This is a new one. Unfortunately, that was just introduced this last week in the House. Of course, they want to create a licensing scheme for private security services. They want to have government control over private security and agencies. Absolutely terrible. They want to take away our guns and they want to regulate private security. No date assigned yet on that one, but unfortunately, that one's coming down the pike. Senate Bill 156, reducing costs of state regulation. Now, this is a great one. Really, we'll talk about this next week, but a really good one there to reduce the cost of regulation in Colorado. Senate Bill 131, reducing the cost of housing, also March 4th. We'll be talking about that one as well next week, so tune in for that. But some good bills to put on your radar. And then grocery, and so that one is like construction defect reform. That's been a big issue in recent years. Senate Bill 139 is the grocery and utility bill reduction measures. Using nuclear energy and repealing certain charges associated with groceries or utilities. I don't know why groceries is in there with nuclear, but I'll have to look into that one. Also March 4th, Senator Baisley. And then here's the dead bills. The cigar bill, dead. Permanent trailer registration, dead. The egg bill, dead. Repealing the bank fee, dead. Insect production for human consumption, dead. Open source voting software, dead. Non-citizen voter registration cancellation, also killed. Local funding for vulnerable road users, that was killed. That was a horrible bill, but we're here. It's coming back in a different form. And then trafficking for abortion, trafficking minors, killed, of course. Disclosing information to immigration authorities, that was killed. That was what Representative Caldwell was talking about tonight. That he allowed that one to die. House Bill 1144, repeal retail delivery fees. That was Boog's bill. Good one that died. And then the rain barrel bill was also killed. So that's what we got, folks. Oh my gosh, 48 slides and 2.5 hours later, but we got some good information out there. Any final thoughts there, Michael?
I just can't believe how many bills they're pushing through this legislative session. I thought it was way too many last year, and they have just exceeded our standards that or their previous benchmarks from last year.
It is absolutely insane. They want to regulate and control everything, people. So get involved, have a voice, do not despair. We got to try, we got to push back, we got to have a voice and do everything we can to have an impact. That's what it comes down to. And don't, at least at the very least, if they're going to pass these bills, we need still people to tell them no, to look them in the eye, tell them they're wrong. We cannot let them pass this tyranny in silence with no opposition, with nobody speaking out, with nobody saying anything, because that's even worse. But at least we can warn them, we can fight, we can warn the public, we can get it out there, we can change the narrative of what's happening in our state. But Michael, any final thoughts?
Just just keep in mind we can get through this. There's only 120 days in the legislative session. We're already 8 weeks through. We're gonna get through this legislative session, and keep your head up high and let's fight. Let's work together. Let's start making inroads so that way we could bring various communities together so that way we're all fighting for a better Colorado.
Well said, sir. Yeah, let's take some names, get some numbers, get some information recorded about how these legislators vote, the bills they're pushing through, the bills they killed, and get this out to the public because the elections need to have what happens in the legislature needs to have an impact in the election. That's what it comes down to. So awesome, but appreciate everybody. We had a great show tonight, lots of great stuff. But appreciate you, Michael. Awesome stuff, and really appreciate Representative Caldwell there.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate everything.
All right. Take care. We'll see you next week, folks. There's going to be plenty more to make your blood boil, get you upset, and hopefully get you motivated to get involved. So thank you.